Page 161. Senior Dugu, I must confess, my martial soul is a highly toxic poison, far more potent than your jade phosphorus snake. The way I neutralize toxins is by injecting my poison into your body. It will gradually overwrite your original venom, becoming even deadlier, yet fully under your control. Beyond that, it enhances every aspect of your strength, making you nearly impossible to kill. Dugubo studied Shi Feng's steady gaze, surprise flickering in his eyes. I never imagined a martial soul more poisonous than mine could exist. If it delivers all these benefits, then I accept. Shi Feng's expression darkened. There is one drawback. Once you've been infected by my poison, you will no longer be able to consume ordinary food. You must subsist on blood alone. A frown formed on Dugubo's forehead. Is it the same for Yanyan? Shi Feng nodded. Yes, Senior Dugu. Nothing in this world comes for free. My poison is called the zombie poison, and while it will grant you tremendous power, it demands a heavy price. If no one kills you, you'll live forever. Shi Feng's calm declaration left Dugubo reeling. Live forever? That's impossible. Even a level 99 titled Douluo eventually meets death. A faint smile touched Shi Feng's lips. My unique poison grants true immortality, so long as no one slays you. Dugubo's eyes narrowed. He'd long known Shi Feng's ruthlessness, slaughtering enemies like wheat in a field, drinking their blood without hesitation. Then prove it, he growled. Show me this poison of yours. Very well. Shi Feng stepped closer. Please roll up your sleeve. Without fully understanding why, Dugubo obeyed, extending his forearm. In a blur, Shi Feng bared his fangs and sank them into the old man's skin. Dugubo gasped, a sharp surprise rather than true pain, when he felt the venom slide beneath his flesh. Shi Feng drew back, not a single drop of blood on his lips. He wiped an invisible smear from his chin, nodded once, then turned to leave. Dugubo watched him go, horror dawning. So that's how he injected the poison. No wonder my granddaughter screamed when she saw him. Silently, Shi Feng vanished into the shadows, leaving Dugubo to grapple with the unsettling truth. Even a death-defying poison must first taste fear before granting its promise of eternal life. Shi Feng watched in silence as Dugubo's eyes widened in alarm. There really is a strange toxin in my body, he gasped. And it's spreading faster than I thought. A quiet smile curved Shi Feng's lips. If nothing intervened, Dugubo would soon complete his transformation into a zombie, albeit one under Shi Feng's unique influence. He still didn't understand how his power worked. The creatures he'd faced before had been mindless, driven solely by dark magic. They certainly hadn't obeyed anyone. Was his ability some kind of latent, supernatural gift? Before Shi Feng could answer his own question, Dugubo's complexion drained of color. A pair of elongated fangs slid into place, giving his normally calm features a feral edge. Shi Feng's voice turned grave. Master Dugu, the corpse poison has fully consumed you. Soon you'll feel an insatiable urge to draw human blood. But heed this, do not bite anyone. If you do, they'll become bloodthirsty zombies too. One infected could spawn 10 more, and those 10 could turn 100 people. We must never allow that to happen. Shi Feng's brow creased as he studied the motionless form before him. If the corpse venom ever spreads beyond containment, he said quietly, the entire continent will descend into chaos. He meant it. An unchecked outbreak of zombified warriors could cripple the Wuhundian legacy in an instant, and unleash horrors none of them could ever undo. Dugubo retracted his curved fangs with a lazy smile. Don't worry, he said, voice smooth as silk. It's simple enough. I'll capture a few willing or unwilling test subjects, let them bleed into the venom, and guide its spread in a controlled way. We'll have samples, data, everything we need to rein it in. Shi Feng nodded, but inside he was watching his own pulse. He could feel a strange stirring in his veins. The greenish venom of the jade phosphorus snake, long sealed inside him, was beginning to merge with the corpse venom. Every muscle fiber, every nerve ending, hummed with a prickling heat. Pain flared in his joints, then slowly ebbed away as the two poisons fused into one. He flexed his fingers. A subtle surge of power radiated through his limbs. Faster reflexes, sharper vision, a sense of strength he'd never known. When the fusion was complete, he would be unstoppable, and the agony of the snake bite would vanish for good. All right, he said at last, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. Let's head back. Night had fallen by the time they returned to Douluo's camp. A smattering of lanterns glowed between the tents, and the air was thick with the tang of herbs and embers. Douluo stepped forward, her dark eyes bright with curiosity. "Well?" she asked. "What did you discover?" Shi Feng sheathed his blade and met her gaze. "Our plan is working," he reported. "Douluo has secured the first batch of test subjects, and I can already feel the venom stabilizing within me. My strength has increased on every level." Douluo's lips curved into a satisfied smile. "Excellent. Rest tonight, then we move at first light. If we're careful, we'll control the corpse venom and ensure that it never falls into the wrong hands." Under the lantern glow, Shi Feng allowed himself a moment of relief. The night might be long, but at least they had a plan, and more importantly, the power to see it through. "Douluo, will you pledge your allegiance to us now?" Douluo asked, his tone edged with expectation. Douluo leveled a cold stare at him. "I will join the Wound Palace," he replied, "but don't think I've forgotten the grievous wounds you once dealt me. I will hold you to account." Douluo merely laughed. "I look forward to that day." Bibi Dong stepped forward, her voice smooth yet commanding. "From this moment on, Douluo, you are an elder in the Spirit Hall. Know that we will treat you with every courtesy." At her side, Shi Feng, the disciple who had orchestrated this arrangement, nodded in approval. Bibi Dong turned to him with a proud smile. "Excellent work, Shi Feng. You continue to impress me." Then she addressed Douluo again. "Do you have a secluded residence in Tiando City?" Douluo inclined his head. "Yes, I have a small remote courtyard just outside the western gate." "Perfect," Bibi Dong said. "We'll stay there tonight, and tomorrow I'll assign you your first missions." In her mind, the plan was already taking shape. Douluo would embed himself within the Tiando royal family, acting as their hidden agent. He would also oversee the cultivation and protection of the newly introduced ice and fire yin-yang brocade, and manage the many rare herbs they would soon need for its growth. Everything was proceeding exactly as Bibi Dong had designed. Shi Feng suddenly spoke up. "Master, please go on ahead. I'd like to remain here in the Eye of Frostfire convergence." Bibi Dong arched an eyebrow in surprise. "Why is that?" "I've discovered I can absorb both the fire poison and the frost toxin swirling in these waters," Shi Feng explained. "If I continue, my body may eventually build an innate resistance to ice and flame." Huliana chimed in eagerly. "Master, I'd also like to stay. I've only drawn a small fraction of these herbs' healing energies. Ever since I left the spring, my absorption has slowed dramatically. I need to return if I'm to fully harness their power." Bibi Dong glanced at them both, then nodded. "Very well. I'll leave one of our elders behind to keep watch." "No need," Huliana protested, cheeks flushing. "This place is so hidden, there's no danger." Although night was already falling, the lantern light glinted off Huliana's rosy cheeks. Douluo smiled reassuringly. "Your Holiness, please do not worry. No one else will find this sanctuary." Chapter 125, Gathering the Celestial Herbs. Bibi Dong surveyed Shi Feng and Huliana with a brief nod. "We'll head back to Wuhun City at first light. You two can make your own way home after that." Shi Feng felt a flicker of unease. Left alone with Huliana in the treacherous ice-fire-hidden gorge, he knew every misstep could prove fatal. He'd always worked best with allies at his back, and Huliana's icy vigilance only heightened his anxiety. Lately, she'd been so tense that he half-joked she could execute him on the spot if he so much as tripped over a root. Without another word, Bibi Dong turned and strode off. In an instant, Douluo and the rest of her party fell in beside her. These were formidable warrior scholars, and none trembled before Douluo's reputation for cunning. Yet his greatest skill was his honor. He had never once gone back on a promise. Even so, Bibi Dong kept her faith in check, knowing full well that trust must be earned day by day. Night had fully descended by the time the larger group's torches dwindled to nothing. Beneath the dense canopy, the gorge lay plunged into a velvet darkness so complete that even the stars had vanished. Shi Feng reached out, took Huliana's hand, and guided her along the narrow path. Each jagged stone, each twisted branch, seemed poised to snare them both. Huliana followed silently, her usual poise replaced by a rare vulnerability. Shi Feng tightened his grip. This was her wise choice, he reminded himself. Together, they would survive the shadows, find the precious celestial herbs, and emerge stronger than ever. The two immortal herbs pulsing within Juliana's body contained an almost overwhelming flood of energy, far more than she could assimilate in a short time. Without the aid of the ice and fire yin-yang eye, she might only refine them to the 60th or 70th cultivation level. Only then would she truly gain fire and ice immunity and invulnerability to 100 poisons. Knowing how vital the yin-yang eye was to her progress, Shi Feng didn't hesitate when Juliana offered to accompany him. It would drastically shorten her absorption time. As they picked their way along the mountain pass, the trees thinned and the bright moonlight spilled across the rocky trail. Neither hurried. Juliana fell in step behind Shi Feng, the soft rustle of their footsteps the only sound. "Xiao Feng," she said softly, "thank you for letting me refine such precious herbs." Shi Feng's voice was steady but casual. "You're my senior sister. If I don't look out for you, who will? Besides, those herbs aren't of much use to me." Despite his offhand tone, Juliana watched his back with genuine gratitude. In the pale glow of the moonlit path, her eyes shone with heartfelt thanks. Shi Feng's already imposing frame seemed to grow even larger in Juliana's eyes. After a long moment of silence, she finally summoned her courage. "Shi Feng," she began, her voice low but steady, "if I agree to accept that girl Shuer into our circle, will you accept me in return?" Shi Feng stiffened for a heartbeat, then let out a soft sigh. "Senior sister," he said gently, "we're still so young. I'm only 10, and you're 15. Give me a few more years." As the words left his lips, he suddenly realized how deeply Juliana had come to mean to him. The longer they'd adventured side by side, the more securely she'd planted herself in his heart, perhaps even rivaling Qian Renxue. If Qian Renxue ever refused to include Juliana in their little family, he honestly didn't know whom he'd choose. He shook his head, determined not to remain on the defensive. Top hunters didn't wait for fate to hand them everything they desired. They went out and claimed it. If he truly cared for both girls, he wanted them both to care for him in return. No more hesitation. Before he could speak, Juliana's uncertain glance flicked towards Shi Feng. "And, about Douluo, do you really think we can trust him? Might he be pretending to submit, just to keep us off guard?" Shi Feng met her eyes with unwavering resolve. "We'll keep our guard up," he promised. "But no matter what happens, I intend to protect both of you, and one day, I hope you'll each protect me in return." In that shared silence, Juliana felt her courage bloom. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whether from rival hunters or hidden conspiracies, she knew she and Shi Feng would face them together, and maybe, just maybe, there would be room in his heart for her as well as Shuer. "You've detoxified him, so he'll probably want to take his granddaughter away," Juliana said quietly once they'd put Douluo out of earshot. "He won't," Shi Feng replied with a confident smile. "First, he's fiercely loyal, and second, his granddaughter has grown very fond of our spirit hall. She won't let him leave." Juliana looked skeptical. "You really think Douluo cares that much about the spirit hall?" "She told me herself." Shi Feng's grin widened as they crested the mountain's peak. With a flick of his wrists, brilliant lightning wings unfolded from his back, crackling with raw energy. "Senior sister," he cautioned as she leaned in, "don't distract me in midair. It's dangerous." A rosy flush colored Juliana's cheeks. She hurriedly dropped her gaze. "I know. I swear it won't happen again." "All right," Shi Feng said, spreading his arms. Juliana's heart fluttered. He was inviting her to embrace him. Gathering herself, she tempered the tempting aura she normally exuded and stepped forward. Gently, she wrapped her arms around Shi Feng's waist. He returned the hug just as softly and, with a surge of electrifying power, launched them both into the sky. Shi Feng felt the lingering warmth of Juliana's touch, but this time his mind was clear. He no longer entertained the same desires as before. Drawing in a steady breath, he condensed his soul force into a pair of translucent wings and lifted himself to the rim of the valley. Gently slipping out of Juliana's embrace, he placed distance between them, while she knelt at the water's edge, cheeks still flushed with color. "I'm going to take a soak," she murmured, voice soft. She began to loosen the sash of her robe. Embarrassed, Shi Feng immediately turned away, fixing his gaze on the moss-covered stones beneath his feet. He didn't dare glance back until he heard the gentle splash of water. Below him, steam curled above the hot spring, drifting in wisps around Juliana's form. Every so often, the mist parted just enough to reveal the graceful line of her shoulders or the curve of her back. Most men would have found the sight irresistible, but Shi Feng clenched his jaw, determined not to let his cultivation suffer. He had promised himself, once he was strong enough, he would accept her feelings. Yet for now, strengthening his soul force came first. Romance would have to wait. His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden, triumphant shout from the pool. Shi Feng, I broke through. I can feel it. My soul force just soared to level 45. A sparkle of energy rippled around Juliana as she swam closer, her excitement echoing across the valley walls. Even through the mist, the glow of her breakthrough was unmistakable. Shi Feng's face flamed as he abruptly stepped back. Senior sister, you're not wearing any clothes. Please, keep your distance. Juliana's eyes glittered with warmth. Once you've fully absorbed the medicinal qi from those 2 herbs, raising your soul power by several ranks will be a breeze. How many ranks are we talking about? Shi Feng asked, heart pounding at the thought of such a breakthrough. She laughed, a soft, melodious sound that sent a thrill through him. Oh, Shi Feng, you have no idea how much I adore you. With a mischievous grin, Juliana began to writhe playfully within the swirling lights of the ice-fire duality formation, her excitement so infectious that Shi Feng found himself too stunned to reply. Shi Feng hesitated for only a moment before shaking his head at the array of dazzling immortal herbs laid out before him. Instead, he reached past them and plucked a single, unassuming ginseng root from the pile. The root was as thick as an adult's forearm, its skin a dark, reddish-brown that might have been mistaken for an oversized carrot by anyone without a trained eye. Unlike the other elixirs, this ginseng gave off no overt aura and exuded barely a scent. But to Shi Feng, it was priceless. Beneath its modest exterior, he could sense something extraordinary pulsing within its flesh, as though the root held living blood and marrow. A subtle, irresistible pull drew him in, an attraction so profound it felt as if the ginseng were tailor-made for him alone. To onlookers, the herb might seem bland and unremarkable among the rare treasures at hand. But Shi Feng's instincts were telling him otherwise. This was the one plant that could truly nourish his spirit and body. It's you then, he murmured, cradling the ginseng in his palm. In that instant, he knew he had made the right choice. Shi Feng examined the ginseng root in his hand. It was enormous, thick as a carrot and covered in dozens of twisting tendrils. After a moment's hesitation, he bit into its base. To his surprise, the outer skin was as hard as a shell. He gritted his teeth, gathered all his strength, and managed to crack a small opening. Immediately, a bright red sap gushed forth, as vivid as fresh blood. Stunned, Shi Feng pressed his lips to the fissure and drew the crimson liquid into his mouth. The moment it touched his tongue, a surge of sensation crackled through him, lifting him from mere physical awareness to something almost spiritual. The flavor was uncanny, reminiscent of blood, yet infinitely more exquisite than any he had ever tasted. Beneath its sweetness, he perceived a subtle compulsion, as though the ginseng were coaxing his very essence to submit. That rich, fragrant sap spread from his mouth through every vein and sinew, merging with his flesh and mingling with his spirit. Shi Feng felt his physical vitality and soul energy swelling in unison, each pulse accelerating his strength. He stared at the ginseng root in awe. Never before had any substance enhanced him so rapidly. As he tasted more of the miraculous juice, he knew this encounter would change him forever. Chapter 126, Awakening Innate Abilities. Shi Feng lowered his head and pressed his lips to the arm-thick ginseng root. As he drew out its life essence, the root withered before his eyes, collapsing into dried fibers once every drop of its crimson juice had been siphoned away. In that instant, Shi Feng's body convulsed, his skin paling to a corpse-white hue. His pupils, once inky black, now gleamed with a faint, alien gold, so subtle that no one around him noticed. A titanic wave of power crashed through him, so fierce that even his iron-honed physique cried out in pain. Yet within that agony, the ginseng's sanguine energy fused seamlessly with his own, infusing every muscle and bone. His cultivation technique roared to life, turbocharging the absorption rate. Even his soul force surged upward, level 37, 38, 39, and finally 40. At the 40th tier, his visible level meter froze, but the flow of energy did not cease. Instead, the surplus essence poured directly into his soul reserves, further strengthening his spiritual core. 3 hours slipped by in the span of a heartbeat before the last trace of the ginseng's power was fully assimilated. Shi Feng rose to his feet, veins throbbing with newfound might. He threw back his head and let out a roar that cleaved the sky itself. Black hair whipped around him like living shadows, and an aura of unbearable dominance radiated outward, bending the very air to his will. Hu Liena had been deep in meditation beside the spring when, all at once, she felt a shift in the air. Eyes snapping open, she stared in shock at the tall, straight-backed figure standing before her, an aura of ruthless dominance pulsing off him like ripples across water. Before she could draw a breath, a beam of silvery moonlight broke through the canopy above and funneled straight down into Shi Feng's sky cap. At that moment, Shi Feng's consciousness was already fraying at the edges, chaos roiling in his mind. Instinctively, he unleashed his aura to meet the incoming energy. As the moonlight seeped into him, his eyes flared golden, the radiance so blinding it lit up the shadowy valley floor in an instant. A crushing pressure emanated from Shi Feng, forcing Hu Liena to stumble back into the spring's shallows as her heart began to pound in her chest. Then came the thunderous crack of his clothes tearing apart. Shi Feng's lean, powerful torso was revealed, every muscle outlined by a faint golden glow. The definition of his physique, clean lines and a perfect 8-pack, was enough to pull Hu Liena's gaze like a magnet, even as she fought the urge to retreat further. In that suspended moment, the spring's tranquil surface trembled under the weight of Shi Feng's awakening power. Hu Liena stared at Shi Feng without blinking, her eyes wide with admiration, as if he were a priceless treasure. His body was almost perfect, every muscle and contour sculpted to perfection, and she couldn't help but swallow hard, the sound echoing unnaturally in the quiet air. Then, something astonishing happened. Golden, snake-like streams of energy began to slither beneath Shi Feng's luminous skin. They writhed and curled, weaving through his veins as though alive. "What is that?" she whispered, her earlier fear of his formidable aura forgotten, replaced wholly by curiosity. She had seen the legendary immortal herb work its miracles before, how it had boosted her cultivation several levels in a single night, and now she wondered if Shi Feng's eerie glow was the same phenomenon. Drawing closer, she reached the water's edge and climbed onto the bank. The golden filaments shone even brighter in the moonlight, pulsing with hidden power. Shi Feng stood perfectly still, as if caught in a trance. Hu Liena's heart thundered in her chest, but she convinced herself, "I'll just take a look," nothing more. Stepping lightly so as not to startle him, she crept forward, determined to uncover the secret of those living, golden serpents beneath his skin. Shi Feng's golden aura, which had glowed steadily around him for several minutes, finally began to fade. Tiny, serpent-like lights streamed across his skin, winding down to his lower abdomen and vanishing into his dantian with a soft pop. Hu Liena stepped forward, curiosity alight in her eyes, only to have the lights wink out before she could get a closer look. Then her eyes flew wide, her breath catching in her throat. She felt 2 scorching gazes burning into her. Lifting her head, she met Shi Feng's fierce stare just as a low roar rumbled from his chest. With a sudden bend of his knees and a powerful kick, Shi Feng rocketed skyward. In mid-ascent, a pair of crackling, lightning-lit wings burst from his back. He beat them once, twice, and in a flash of blinding speed, he vanished across the valley. A scarlet mist drifted down from above, splashing across Hu Liena's skin and sending a warm flush through her. She froze for a heartbeat, cheeks flaming, then whirled around and dove into the water. High on the mountain peak, Shi Feng let the biting wind wash over him, easing the volatile power that had nearly torn him apart seconds before. Relief flooded him. If he'd awakened any later, who knew what havoc Hu Liena might have wreaked? He retrieved his untouched garments from the soul guide, slipped them on, and climbed onto a hefty boulder. Settling into a meditative stance, he closed his eyes and probed the changes within. His soul force had surged to the 40th tier. His stamina, his raw strength, every aspect of his physique had been amplified. By his reckoning, his overall fitness had at least doubled since consuming that strange herb. What on earth could it have been? Ginseng, perhaps? If not for the telltale husk, he might have sworn it was the blood of some mythical beast. Yet, The greatest boon Shi Feng gained wasn't his amplified soul power or enhanced physique. It was a new ability that awakened at the final moment. From the zombie's residual memories, he learned this was an innate supernatural power, a rare force so potent it normally required centuries of cultivation or a specific catalyst to unlock. What he'd activated was pure force, an elemental power capable, in theory, of shattering 10,000 spells with a single strike. Shi Feng knew he wasn't yet strong enough to unleash that full cataclysm, but even a fraction of such raw energy was staggering. Concentrating, he drew on the mysterious reserve stored in the corpse pill within his dantian. Instantly, a surging might coursed through his veins. He flexed his muscles, and the air around him shivered. My strength has increased 5-fold. Shi Feng breathed, exhilarated by the power humming at his fingertips. Shi Feng felt a thrill run through him. His innate strength was already formidable, and the supernatural power he'd just absorbed amplified it 5-fold. He had no idea what his true combat potential might be now. Chances were, no one in the Soul Sect could withstand even a single blow from him. And if he unleashed his first Spirit Ring skill, refined over 5,000 years, his power would grow yet again. He grinned at the thought of testing himself against one of the Soul Sect's top powerhouses, just to see how far he'd come. But before he could make any plans, another thought swept into his mind. Renxue. She should be in Tiando City by now, residing within the Imperial Palace. It had been 4 years since they'd parted ways, and to his surprise, he missed her more deeply than he'd expected. Checking his pouch, he found several precious fairy herbs, immortal plants whose potency only increased if used promptly. He resolved to send one to Renxue at once, hoping it would accelerate her cultivation. And secretly, he looked forward to the chance to see her again. After all this time, she must have grown into an elegant beauty, perhaps even rivaling the famed Huliena. The idea made his heart pound. It was time to reunite with Renxue and share in each other's progress. Chapter 127. Shi Feng ran a hand over his face, a playful smile tugging at his lips. I wonder if she'll be surprised to see me, he mused, still confident in his appearance. Before he could dwell on it further, a sleek black sparrow swooped down from nearby and took off toward Tiando City. The bird cut across the dawn sky, headed straight for the heart of the sprawling metropolis. 10 minutes later, Shi Feng caught sight of a vast palace complex rising above the city walls. He didn't need to guess twice. That has to be the Imperial Palace, he decided. No other structure in Tiando City could rival its grandeur. From a distance, the palace walls looked every bit as formidable as the city's outer fortifications, towering more than 80 meters high and over 20 meters thick. Without hesitation, Shi Feng guided the black sparrow through the breach in the ramparts and into the palace grounds. Inside, everything lay hushed under the pale morning light. Courtyards stood empty, and corridors echoed only with the sparrow's wings. With no sign of Renxue anywhere, Shi Feng circled the complex, scanning every corner in vain. Finally, he settled the bird on the rooftop of the grandest hall at the center of the palace. From this vantage point, he could survey the entire courtyard below. Quiet and still as it was, he could almost hear his own pulse as he waited, hoping that soon the figure he sought would appear. Shi Feng knew that at first light he'd have a better vantage point for spotting Renxue's trail. Satisfied for the moment, he turned and leapt into the depths of the valley below. Lei Guangqi clung to the cliff face, digging his toes in and channeling his strength until, a short while later, he too arrived safely at the valley floor. Below, Huliena was already back at the Icefire Yin-Yang Eye, standing at its very center amid the swirling, mist-shrouded waters as she continued her cultivation. Shi Feng paused long enough to glance her way, then shook his head and moved toward the shore where the lingering toxins of flame and frost pooled in the shallows. He had to absorb their poisonous energies in order to refine the 2 rare herbs Huliena had given him. Only once the herbs' medicinal properties had fully neutralized the fire poison and cold poison would they be free to depart. When dawn broke, a soft rustle stirred the mist. Shi Feng's eyes fluttered open. He turned his head and froze. Just behind him, Huliena was bending over, gathering their garments from the dewy grass. His pulse slammed against his ribs, yet she remained completely unaware that he'd awakened. Juliana's beauty was effortless and utterly captivating. Beyond that natural grace, her figure was absolutely flawless. Shi Feng drew in a quiet breath, afraid that even the faintest sound might startle her. Shi Feng stared at the breathtaking panorama before him, words failing to capture its beauty. Suddenly, Juliana's instincts kicked in. She spun around and their eyes met. Embarrassed, Shi Feng snapped his gaze shut and turned away. "Feng, I'm hungry," she said, voice softening. A few moments later, Juliana returned. Her cheeks still held a rosy glow, but she betrayed no lingering awkwardness over Shi Feng's momentary glance. If anything, a small thrill danced in her eyes. Reluctantly, Shi Feng ended his cultivation, withdrew a handful of dried rations from his soul tool's storage, and handed them to her. She sniffed at the parcels and curled her lips. "These are too rich. I don't want them." She rolled her eyes and added, "Why don't we go into Tiando City for something better to eat and a bit of sightseeing?" Shi Feng blinked in surprise, then offered a warm smile. "That sounds perfect. A change of scenery will do us good. We can resume training when we return." He rose to his feet, unfolded his graceful wings, and walked to her side. Juliana opened her arms invitingly, and without thinking, he drew her into an easy embrace. Together, they lifted off, and soon stood atop the mountain peak, ready to make their way down toward Tiando City. Shi Feng's lightning wing skill was draining his soul power faster than he liked, and with Juliana at his side, they didn't dare tarry. The sunset forest was alive with soul beasts, some rumored to be 1,000 years old, but between Juliana's prowess and Shi Feng's own strength, they walked unafraid. They pressed on at a brisk pace. As they moved, Shi Feng quietly split off a sliver of his consciousness to the little black sparrow hovering nearby. Deep inside the imperial palace, the day's court assembly was already convening. Ministers in elaborate robes streamed toward the grand hall, trading low voices about agendas and petitions. From their murmurs, Shi Feng learned that the emperor would be holding court at first light, a perfect opportunity since the crown prince was sure to attend. True enough, once the ministers had settled and the doors to the hall swung open, Shi Feng's gaze snapped to the prince. In his mid-20s, the young royal wasn't as striking as Shi Feng, but he was handsome nonetheless, standing around 1.8 meters tall, with jet-black hair pulled into a neat topknot that cascaded down his back. His bearing was refined and gentle, every gesture measured. Shi Feng's eyes brightened. This audience could make or break everything he hoped to achieve. Shi Feng paused in his cultivation, a sudden thought flickering through his mind. This should be Shui'er's moment. She ought to be stepping in for Shui Qinghe right now. A soft voice broke his reverie. "Feng, what's gotten into you? You've been giggling like a schoolboy." Juliana held her hand in front of his face, shaking it gently. Startled, Shi Feng blinked and forced himself back to reality. "Nothing," he replied with a sheepish grin. "Let's go." Before she could protest, he darted outside. Juliana could only shake her head and hurry after him, still puzzled by his odd behavior. By midday, they arrived at Tiando City. After a simple meal, they stocked up on daily supplies and made their way back to the Eye of Ice and Fire. On the way, Shi Feng sensed Duguyan's aura hovering somewhere within the clan grounds. He'd planned to send her a medicinal herb. After all, she now answered to him, but thought better of it. At 31, her cultivation was barely at Foundation Establishment level 17. It would be a waste of precious immortal-grade ingredients. Once they returned to their secluded chamber in the Eye of Ice and Fire, they resumed their training. Juliana no longer kept her distance from Shi Feng. Though her cheeks still carried a hint of bashfulness, she now moved and stretched openly in his presence, confident in the unspoken bond they shared. Shi Feng rose from the steaming spring every few hours. Soaking too long left him stiff and chilled. Each time he emerged, Juliana's pulse quickened. He never looked away, his bold, unguarded gaze tracing the curve of her shoulders, the sweep of her hair. Though they sat side by side, fully clothed and respectful of each other's space, an invisible thread was drawing them closer. Shi Feng restrained himself, and Lin, mindful of the gentle rebuke he'd given her just days before, dared not press his patience. In her eyes, this junior brother carried a quiet dignity that was never to be tested. By nightfall, they shared a simple meal of steamed buns and mountain spring tea in the lantern's soft glow. Shi Feng broke the comfortable silence. Senior sister, I have some business beyond the mountain tonight. I may not return until dawn. Go safely, Juliana replied with a nod, her curiosity unspoken but understood. With that, Shi Feng spread the pale leather of his wings and lifted into the sky. The little black sparrow, the messenger he'd raised, flitted up to rest on his outstretched arm. Settling on a ridge just above the treetops, he withdrew a slim piece of parchment and ink brush. In swift, precise strokes, he wrote, Sister Shuer, this is Shi Feng. I'm waiting outside Tiando City's south gate. Come quickly. He rolled the note into a tight scroll, tucked it beneath the sparrow's small beak, and whispered, Fly, and return with her answer. The bird vibrated its wings once, then vanished into the velvety darkness, bearing their hopes on silent feathers. Shi Feng wasted no time. As twilight fell, he slipped down the mountain and headed straight for Tiando City. He had no hope of forcing his way into the palace gates. His best chance was to lure the prince out himself. Over the last 24 hours, he'd sent his spy, the little black sparrow, into the palace to observe the prince's routines. He was now certain the prince was actually Qian Renshui in disguise, a fact known only to Bibi Dong, Hu Lina, and Qian Douluo. All that remained was to deliver his message. Once Renshui saw his note, she would have no choice but to meet him outside. By the time Shi Feng reached the city walls, his sparrow had already slipped inside and flown straight to the prince's quarters. Guiding it through an open window, he watched as it alighted silently on the edge of a low shelf. Moments later, a soft but sharp voice rang out. Who's there? Qian Renshui sat up in her bed, eyes narrowing as she scanned the room. Her tone was half annoyed, half curious, but when she saw only a small black bird fluttering in the moonlight, her expression softened. Outside the palace gate, Shi Feng stiffened. He blinked once, and then, to his own astonishment, felt a warm trickle on his upper lip. His eyes widened as a thin stream of blood seeped from his nostrils. Whether it was shock, excitement, or something else entirely, he couldn't tell. But one thing was certain, his bold plan had just begun to pay off. Chapter 128. Shi Feng could still feel the lingering burns of the fire poison coursing through his veins, and the memory of Juliana's taunts fanned the embers of his temper to an almost uncontrollable blaze. Now, standing outside Qian Renshui's chamber door, he found his resolve slipping. Every instinct in him urged him to burst in. 4 years ago, a fledgling Qian Renshui might have paled beside Juliana's striking form, but time had wrought a dramatic change. In Shi Feng's eyes, Renshui now rivaled, even surpassed, Juliana's beauty. At 1.8 meters tall, her proportions were nothing short of perfect. Her face, a flawless heirloom of Bibi Dong's renowned genes, showed no blemish or imperfection. Her skin was whiter than driven snow. Her long golden hair still glistened with moisture, testifying that she had only just stepped from the shower. He drew in a sharp breath. Qian Renshui, catching sight of him, visibly relaxed. Thank goodness it's you, she murmured, wrapping the soft pastel pajamas more securely around her. Yet after a heartbeat, her forehead creased with unease as she realized Shi Feng had not moved an inch. He simply stood there, staring as though transfixed. The intensity of his gaze sent a shiver down Renshui's spine. She felt exposed, almost violated by the silence between them. Summoning her composure, she cleared her throat. Shi Feng, why are you here? Her voice, gentle yet edged with caution, finally drew him back from whatever storm lurked behind his eyes. But the silence that followed was heavier than any words he might speak. Shi Feng's heart pounded. How had the little black sparrow pinpointed Qian Renshui's location so precisely? If she pressed him for answers, she'd surely learn the bird's secret and punish him for hiding it. He had intended to explain the sparrow's extraordinary tracking ability, but fate had intervened. He'd stumbled into Qian Renshui the moment he stepped out of the bath. Now her eyes snapped to the tiny bird, her soul energy rippling with suspicion. She crept forward, every muscle poised to seize it. Shi Feng clenched his fists, desperate to keep the sparrow's secret safe. Spit it out, he willed, and the bird obeyed at once, disgorging a neatly folded note that floated to the cold stone floor. He couldn't afford any other plan. If the message spoke of the immortal herbs, Qian Renshui might spare him, for their sake, and perhaps by remembering the affection they once shared. The thought warmed him, despite the fear thrumming through his veins. Qian Renshui's brow furrowed in surprise as she spotted the scrap of paper. She knelt gracefully, lifted it from the floor, and unfolded it with careful fingers. Shi Feng held his breath, bracing for her reaction. Qian Renshui unfolded the note and instantly recognized Shi Feng's neat, precise handwriting. Xiaochen? How could he be outside Tiando City, and how did he even know I was here? She murmured, frowning. Her first impulse was to dismiss it as a prank, but she quickly shook her head. She'd hidden herself flawlessly, never leaving a trace, and only a handful of people, all within the Wuhun Palace, knew her true identity. Shi Feng was one of them. There was no way this message wasn't real. Yet how had Shi Feng pinpointed her location so exactly? Her gaze drifted to the little black bird perched nearby, and she recalled that uncanny feeling of being watched. Perhaps it hadn't been mere imagination after all. Determined, she set the note aside and rose to her feet. It was time to see for herself. Gathering a set of plain travel clothes, she prepared to change and step outside, ready to demand the answers she'd been given. Qian Renshui paused when she saw the little black sparrow still perched in her chamber. She abandoned any thought of changing here and stepped into the bathroom instead. Moments later, she emerged in a sleek, all-black outfit. Casting a final glance at the bird, she approached her bed and lifted the hidden panel at its footboard. A soft grinding noise resonated as the panel unlocked, revealing a narrow, dimly lit passage beneath. With a single, fluid motion, she vaulted onto the mattress. As the mechanism snapped back into place, the sparrow dissolved into a wisp of darkness and slipped through the closing gap. Qian Renshui reached up, pulled a torch from its wall bracket, and struck the flint to ignite it. She turned to leave, only to feel a light weight land on her shoulder. The sparrow had returned, folding its wings and fixing her with its glossy, unblinking gaze. Gently, Qian Renshui stroked its midnight black feathers. The little creature showed no fear, its bright eyes reflecting the torchlight. She suppressed a shiver, tightened her grip on the torch, and stepped into the narrow tunnel. It had taken her more than a year to construct this secret route, years she spent quietly directing the Wuhun Palace staff after she assumed the Crown Prince's identity. Tonight, as always, it would serve as her only means of slipping out of the palace unnoticed. Qian Renshui slipped out of the imperial palace grounds and paused for a moment in a secluded courtyard on the outskirts of Tiando City. When she finally emerged, she set off toward the city's south gate. As the capital of the Heaven Do Empire, Tiando never slept. Its streets buzzed with life. Its gates remained open through the night. Once they were well outside the walls, the little black bird fluttered free from Qian Renshui's shoulder and vanished into the darkness. She watched its silhouette disappear, then closed her eyes, recalling Shi Feng's face as she'd first seen him 4 years ago, a bright-eyed, adorable little boy. By now, she told herself, he must be taller, stronger. Yet standing before the south gate, among the throng of travelers and merchants, there was no sign of him. A smooth, magnetic voice cut through her thoughts. "Excuse me, beauty, could I have the honor of your acquaintance?" Qian Renshui turned on him in an instant. A tall, well-built man with a rakish grin had elbowed his way into her path. He was handsome in that arrogant, dangerous way, but Qian Renshui didn't hesitate. Her tone snapped cold as ice. "Get lost." She unleashed a surge of her inner energy, and the man staggered back, glare replaced by surprise. Qian Renshui didn't stay to watch him recover. She scanned the crowd once more, hope fluttering and failing deep in her chest. "Where were you, Shi Feng?" she wondered. "Wherever you've gone, I must find you." Shi Feng found himself involuntarily stepping back as Qian Renshui's presence washed over him like a storm. She truly was formidable, yet upon seeing such a handsome man, she didn't hesitate to unleash a tirade of insults, leaving him no opportunity to defend himself. Page 167. Qian Renshui's scowl deepened as she watched the man hesitate at the gate. She was about to unleash another tirade when the stranger's features suddenly shifted. His eyes darkened to inky black, and 2 slender fangs glistened at his lips. "Xuer," he said in a low, teasing voice, "if you refuse to admit who I am and still threaten me, you're breaking my heart." Qian Renshui froze, stunned by the familiar face before her. Then, in an instant, it reverted to the handsome youth she once knew. "Shi Feng," she breathed. He gave her an innocent, almost hurt expression. Who else could it be? You're the only one who can break my heart, Shuer. Recognition flashed across Chan Renshui's features as she took his hand in hers. His grip was warm and unchanging, just as she remembered. It really is you, she whispered, eyes bright with surprise. Why are you here? Before Shi Feng could answer, she gently but firmly guided him away from the gate. Let's find somewhere more private to talk. With her slender fingers entwined around his, Chan Renshui led him swiftly into the city, their shared past and unknown future pressing between them like a held breath. They walked in silence until they reached the secluded courtyard. Once inside, Chan Renshui lit the lantern, bathing the room in soft golden light. She surveyed Shi Feng from head to toe, eyes widening in surprise. Feng, I haven't seen you in 4 years. How did you get so tall? Shi Feng grinned. You nearly could have beaten me to it. Her lips curved into an exasperated smile. Don't flatter yourself. If you tease me again, I'll show you just how hard I can hit. A faint warmth fluttered in Shi Feng's chest at her teasing tone, but he cleared it quickly. Why are you here, Renshui? Did your master finally allow you to visit? She shook her head. No. Shi Feng nodded, coming straight to the point. Then you must be here for that fairy herb I found. Her eyes lit up. Of course, I knew you wouldn't forget me. She reached out to ruffle his hair, only to pause when she realized they were nearly the same height. You really are my big brother, she murmured affectionately. Shi Feng chuckled. Speaking of which, how did you track me down in the palace? And what happened with that little black bird you mentioned? Chapter 129. Do you think your sister is pretty? Shi Feng's heart tightened the moment Chan Renshui repeated her question. He hovered just out of her reach, cautious. Sister, if I answer you, will you promise to stop hitting me? He asked warily. For a heartbeat, her cheerful smile faltered. Then she laughed softly. Why would I ever refuse to hit you? Shi Feng exhaled and chose his words carefully. That little bird you saw was my puppet, fully under my control. I can see and hear everything it does. I followed it here, and it took me a full day to locate you. He braced himself, muscles coiled for flight or fight. Any sign of danger, and he'd bolt or defend himself in an instant. Instead of anger, Chan Renshui's smile only grew broader, her eyes bright with amusement. Xiao Feng, she said, tilting her head, do you think my sister is pretty? Shi Feng froze. The memory of that little black sparrow swooping in, spying on her before she'd even had a chance to dress, flashed through his mind. And yet here she was, almost teasing him, her expression more intense than before. He swallowed hard. His pulse raced. Was she flirting? Did she actually like him? Despite the absurdity of the question, his honest reply hovered on his lips. Chan Renshui waited, her gaze steady and expectant, as if she already knew the answer she wanted. Isn't it disgusting to make me see that? Shi Feng blurted, eyes wide with embarrassment. Shameless, Chan Renshui snapped. Before he could react, she shot out her slender, jade-fair hand and clamped down on his ear like a vice. Ouch! Shi Feng yelped, hopping on one foot. Stinky brat, where did you pick up these bad habits? Always itching to peek, aren't you? Her face, usually smooth and impassive, now crackled wisely, the frost. She glared at him, lips drawn in a cold line. Shi Feng hastily raised both hands in surrender. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I shouldn't have. He swallowed hard. My sister, she really does have a perfect figure. At that, Renshui twisted her grip even tighter. Pain shot through his ear, and he howled again. No, I didn't see anything, please. Only when his voice cracked with genuine panic did she finally release him, stepping back with a contemptuous snort. You'd better remember this lesson. If you weren't my younger brother, I'd have turned you inside out by now. Gasping for breath, Shi Feng rubbed his throbbing ear. He forced out a meek promise. I swear, there won't be a next time. Renshui watched him for a moment, her anger slowly ebbing away. Beneath her mask of icy severity, a faint blush warmed her cheeks. She straightened her robes and turned away, but her heart fluttered at the sight of her brother's contrite face. Chan Renshui's cheeks burned with the familiar heat of shame. No matter how many times she told herself not to be embarrassed at a man's glance, the moment Shi Feng stood before her naked, she couldn't help her shallow breathing. If he still looked like the gawky boy she'd known in their youth, she might have laughed it off. But this was a fully grown man, tall, broad-shouldered, and undeniably handsome, and her fluttering heart betrayed her anger. Still, she had to save face. She drew in a steadying breath, stretched out a slender hand, and spoke with cool authority. You exposed yourself recklessly. Fetch me the fairy herb you promised as compensation. Shi Feng wasted no time. He reached into his traveling pouch and produced a single blossom of pristine whiteness. Its petals were as translucent as morning dew, with veins so delicate they seemed carved from jade. Sister Renxue, he said, bowing slightly, this is the Narcissus jade muscle bone. If you consume it, your tendons will grow supple and your bones strengthened. Its qi clears the 8 meridian pathways, raising your cultivation level by at least a few grades. Once your meridians are unblocked, your overall training speed improves too. Qian Renxue stared at the flower in his hand, astonished. She had heard of countless miraculous herbs, but one that could boost cultivation levels so directly? Such a potent herb, she murmured. Surely it must carry side effects. She eyed Shi Feng warily. What price do I pay for these benefits? Page 168. Don't worry. This celestial herb strengthens your foundation and nourishes your vitality. There are no side effects. Qian Renxue exhaled in relief. Then, how should I take it? Just pluck the top petals and suck the stamens, Shi Feng instructed. Once you've done that, use your soul power to trigger absorption. Stay calm. Got it, Xiao Feng. Thank you so much. Qian Renxue offered a grateful smile. You're welcome, senior sister. I'll stand guard while you absorb it, Shi Feng replied. Qian Renxue nodded and moved to the edge of the bed, sitting cross-legged. The little chamber, though seldom used, was spotless. Following Shi Feng's steps, she carefully ate the narcissus petals and then drew the stamens into her mouth. Almost at once, a gentle, potent wave of medicinal energy unfurled through her veins. She steadied her breathing and focused her soul power. Shi Feng stood before her, watching as a serene expression settled on her face. The soft curve of her brows, the delicate tilt of her shoulders, and the quiet determination in her posture, every detail held him spellbound. Shuer, he murmured softly, we've finally met. From now on, I will protect you. In less than an hour, Qian Renshui's cultivation had soared to new heights. Her long lashes fluttered as she opened her eyes, amazement shining in their depths. Xiaochen, she breathed, I've broken through. That Narcissus Jade Bone Herb propelled me 3 levels at once. I'm now a level 58 Soul King. Overcome with joy, she threw her arms around Shi Feng. He smiled warmly. Letting her use that precious herb had been the right choice, saving her at least a full year of soul refinement effort. After a moment, Qian Renxue stepped back and tugged Shi Feng down beside her on the dewy grass. She studied his face, curiosity in her gaze. Xiaochen, you haven't fallen behind in all these years, have you? Shi Feng returned her look with a grin. I took a herb too, he admitted. I'm now a level 60 Soul King. For a heartbeat, Qian Renxue stared at him in disbelief. Then she burst out, Pervert! Only to dissolve into laughter moments later. 10 years old and already level 60? You're even faster than I ever was. Shi Feng chuckled and gave her shoulder a playful nudge. Together, they sat in companionable silence, the rising sun casting a warm glow over 2 prodigious cultivators, bound by friendship, rivalry, and a promise to protect one another. Shi Feng smiled and stood up. Sister, come take a look at my soul rings. Under Qian Renshui's astonished gaze, 3 glowing rings floated up from Shi's feet, 2 deep purple and 1 ominous black. Her jaw dropped in disbelief. Just moments ago, she'd still believed herself a match for him. Now all her confidence was in ruins. My dear brother, she stammered, trying to recover, you'll be an incredible help to me from now on. She forced a reassuring smile. I'll ask the teacher to arrange for me to join you as soon as possible. Shi Feng nodded. Qian Renxue hesitated, then added softly, and about mother's heart knot. She let the sentence hang, eyes full of worry. His expression turned serious. I tested the teacher's feelings. She truly loves you, but something inside her is holding her back. Don't worry. I'll make sure she lets go of whatever's weighing her down so she can care for you properly. A radiant relief colored her face. Thank you so much, Xiao Feng. My sister can't even begin to repay you. He laughed quietly. Silly sister, you needn't repay me for anything. He glanced at the sky. It's getting late. I should be going. Qian Renxue nodded, her heart lighter than it had been in ages. She watched him walk away, already eager for the day they'd stand side by side once more. When I come next time, I'll stay by your side and help you. Next time, slip straight into my room through the secret passage. No more of that pesky bird, Qian Renshui said, pressing against a concealed panel in the wall. The stone door slid open, revealing a narrow corridor. I know, Shi Feng replied, his che, flushing. Xiaoxue, Qian Renshui called, and a tall girl in black stepped forward. Her gaze was as cold and sharp as her uniform, betraying no emotion even in Qian Renshui's presence. This is my younger brother, Shi Feng. From now on, he's free to come and go here whenever he likes, Qian Renshui announced. Understood, miss, Xiaoxue said, inclining her head and slipping away without another word. I should go, Shi Feng said, standing up. Qian Renshui rose as well and wrapped him in a warm embrace. Train hard and take care of yourself. You too, Shi Feng answered, returning the hug. Despite his reluctance to part, he turned for the exit, confident that soon he'd be back by her side. As he reached the threshold, he heard her soft murmur, You really do care for me a bit, don't you, Xiao Feng? He paused, heart racing, and stepped out into the night. Chapter 130, New Missions. For 2 years, ever since she assumed Shui Qinghei's identity, Qian Renshui had hidden her true self behind an impeccable facade. Now, with fresh threats on the horizon, both she and Shi Feng would face challenges more dangerous than ever before. Only under the cover of night could Shi Feng slip back into his true form and stand before the mirror, free at last to admire the sharp lines of his face and the flawless sweep of his figure. He was well aware of just how striking his features were, how perfectly his build filled out any garment. In his mind, only his mother, Bibi Dong, could even come close to matching his appearance. Shi Feng knew he'd been staring at Qian Renshui more often than he realized. He'd always managed to hide his admiration, but she was sharp, so sharp that she guessed his feelings right away. Shi Feng's grown up, she'd said with a gentle smile. He's learning to appreciate beauty. She let out a soft sigh as she stepped onto the hidden mountain path. Shi Feng followed closely, his spirits soaring. They hadn't seen each other in 4 years, yet their bond felt as strong as ever. Even that embarrassing incident, when he'd accidentally walked in on her, resulted only in a mild scolding. The tenderness behind her chastisement told him everything he needed to know about how much she cared. Still, he couldn't help but wonder if their sibling-like closeness could ever turn into something more romantic. He'd never truly pursued Hu Liana before, yet lately his thoughts kept drifting to her. How had these feelings blossomed so suddenly? Was it the uncertainty between them that ignited his heart? He remembered how Juliana's own attraction must have started in that gray area of unspoken tension. His confident bearing had drawn her in, and she, in turn, had become an irresistible temptation for him. As Shi Feng picked his way along the narrow trail, he realized that the line between friendship and love often begins with a single, ambiguous glance, and that, perhaps, was the most dangerous temptation of all. Shi Feng lingered on the rocky summit's edge, watching Qian Renshui's graceful form drifting among the moonlit pines below. A sly smile curved his lips. Someday soon, he decided, he'd strike up a closer friendship, perhaps even win her heart, just as he'd once sworn to charm senior sister Hu Liana. Qian Renshui was far too remarkable to let slip through his fingers. Night had already settled over the mountain by the time he climbed back up, 5 long hours of narrow trails and jagged cliffs. On a stunted fir branch not far off, the little black sparrow, his ever-watchful companion, chirped softly, glad to be reunited. Shi Feng signaled it to roost and set about reinforcing the magical wards he and Hu Liana had erected. Between her cultivation session and his vigilant watch, any intruder would be revealed at once. He paused, torn between calling out and preserving her concentration. In the end, he stowed his sword, Lei Guangji, sheathing its latent lightning to avoid startling her, and slipped down into the misty ravine below. He moved like a boundless shadow, silent, swift, precise, until the forest floor opened before him. That's when he saw her, Hu Liana, darting among the ancient cedars and gnarled roots, her usually serene expression twisted with distress. Her cheeks were flushed purple, and her slender legs shook so badly it looked as if she might collapse at any moment. Senior sister, Shi Feng burst through the underbrush, rushing to her side. What's happened? Are you hurt? Hu Liana stopped short, eyes wild. She lunged forward, then lurched backward, fighting to maintain her balance. Her breath came in sharp gasps, each exhale a ragged whisper. I don't know, she stammered, pressing a trembling hand to her forehead. Something's blocking my chi flow. I can't stabilize my energy. Shi Feng's heart thudded in his chest. In all his training, he'd never seen a cultivator's internal channels rebel so violently. If he didn't act fast, the backlash could shatter her foundation altogether. Dropping to one knee, he placed a steadying hand on Huliena's shoulder. Hold still, he ordered quietly. From the folds of his tunic, he drew a jade chalcedony pendant, an artifact attuned to harmonize errant energies. This is a Dianlei jewel. Let me try to restore your flow. Before she could protest, he pressed the jewel against her pulsating pulse point. A gentle, pale glow spread through her veins, threading silver warmth along her limbs. The tremors in her legs slowed, the purple tint on her cheeks eased, and her breaths became steadier. Huliena's eyes fluttered closed, relief softening her features. Shi Feng breathed, a silent prayer of thanks, as the Dianlei jewel's radiance wove a soothing tapestry through her disrupted meridians. Moments later, she opened her eyes, their stormy panic replaced by a fragile, grateful calm. Thank you, she murmured, voice clearer now. I don't know what would have happened if you'd come a moment later. Shi Feng allowed himself a small, triumphant smile. That's what senior brothers are for. He helped her to her feet, resolving silently that no matter what dangers lay hidden in these mountains, he'd stand guard and keep his promise to protect her. Shi Feng had barely landed when Huliena, her face tinged purple and her body trembling, spotted him and hurried over. Shi Feng, fly me up, quickly. Senior sister, are you poisoned? Shi Feng asked, concern tightening his voice. Yes, I'm poisoned. Hurry. Huliena's eyes flickered with urgency. He glanced at the rocky slope behind them. Do we really have to go all the way up there? You could just use earth chi to extract the antidotal herbs right here. Huliena snatched Shi Feng's ear. Even pale and weak, she managed an exasperated glare. Do you want to or not? All right. Shi Feng summoned his lightning wings and lifted off. Huliena wrapped her arms around his neck, glaring at him over her shoulder. No peeking. At the summit, she stumbled off his back and darted behind a cluster of silver-leafed plants. Stay there, she called, voice tight with effort. Shi Feng hovered, curiosity gnawing at him. 10 minutes later, Huliena reappeared, her face flushed but calm. She brushed dirt from her robes and offered him a hint of a grateful smile. Why drag yourself up here, just to fuss over herbs? Shi Feng said, folding his arms. Her cheeks warmed. Because I wanted you to handle it. He blinked, at a loss for words, before clearing his throat. Fair enough. But how's the antidote working? Any improvement? Huliena closed her eyes, breathing more easily. It's taking effect. Thank you, Shi Feng. Shi Feng let out a relieved breath. Good. Rest here a while. I'll keep watch. She nodded, settling onto a smooth rock. As Shi Feng circled overhead, he couldn't help but smile. His senior sister looked far better than she had minutes ago. The mountain wind whispered through silver leaves, and all was well, for now. If nothing else comes up, we should head back. Shi Feng could feel that the fire and frost poisons no longer affected him. There was no harm in returning early to ask Master Bibi Dong when he'd be sent on missions to the heavenly Dou Empire. Huliena glanced at him and said, The poisons are almost fully absorbed. My soul power has jumped from level 44 to level 48. In that case, let's set off tomorrow, Shi Feng replied. So soon? Huliena sounded unexpectedly reluctant. Staying here gave her a perfectly valid reason to be close to Shi Feng, and over these past few days he'd begun to accept her company. She worried that once they left, he'd slip back into his old habit of keeping her at arm's length. Shi Feng didn't notice her hesitation. We shouldn't delay. Master might already be waiting for us. All right, Huliena agreed, forcing a smile. I'll spend one more night on cultivation, then we'll descend. Shi Feng nodded, folded his wings, and glided down beside her. As Huliena began slipping out of her clothes, Shi Feng felt a sudden jolt of desire. He couldn't help blurting out, Don't worry, senior sister. In this life, you and Xuer will both be mine. Huliena froze in place for a moment, then, after a brief hesitation, slipped quietly into the steaming water. She'd toyed with the idea of sharing Shi Feng's affections with Qianrenshui, but she'd never fully committed to it, until now. His bold declaration made it plain just how much she mattered to him. Shi Feng forced a wry smile as he watched her hazy silhouette through the mist. Hulina had tempted him countless times. If he'd let himself go, he'd have claimed her long ago. His body was fully grown, and his spirit that of an adult, so restraint wasn't a problem for him. But Hulina was only 15. Even in Douluo, one had to be at least 16 to be considered an adult. This wasn't his old Earth, true, but his own moral line still held firm. Shi Feng felt the onslaught of fire and frost drop away completely. In that instant, he knew his body had forged a formidable resistance, perhaps even total immunity, to both scorching flames and biting cold poisons. Not even the ancient fiend Douluo Bo would dare to underestimate such elemental toxins. Thanks to the corpse poison now coursing through his veins, its potency amplified by the absorption of ice and fire, Shi Feng's own strength had surged to unknown heights. He was confident he could threaten a Douluo with this newfound power, though actually slaying one remained an almost impossible feat. A sufficient gap in raw strength could still overwhelm him. As his cultivation continued to advance, the venom within would only grow more terrifying. One day, when he himself reached the realm of Douluo, the very aura of his corpse poison might send tremors through the hearts of every peer in that exalted rank. And yet, despite all these gains, Shi Feng found himself haunted by a single mystery. The eye of ice-fire yin-yang he now possessed seemed to harbor deeper secrets he had barely begun to uncover. Ever since Shi Feng absorbed the blood ginseng tree, he had sensed a subtle pull beneath the surface of the ice and fire yin-yang spring. He asked Hulina to dive in and investigate, but she discovered nothing. After all, the spring wasn't very deep. Finding no obvious cause, he reluctantly let the matter drop. Truth be told, he was torn between curiosity and caution. If the spring water could dissolve his body's lingering poisons, what else might it conceal? At dawn the next morning, Shi Feng and Hulina slipped away from the spring's edge and headed back toward Wuhan City. The journey took them 5 days, but at last they arrived safely within its ancient walls. They made their way to Bibi Dong's chambers and stood respectfully before her. "Tomorrow," Bibi Dong announced, her voice calm but commanding, "the masters of the Wuhan Temple, those most skilled in combat and soul techniques, will gather to train you. Prepare yourselves and study diligently." Shi Feng bowed his head. Whatever lay ahead, he would meet it with all the resolve he had cultivated under the spring's mysterious gaze. Chapter 131, Bibi Dong's Ultimate Test. Bibi Dong's expression was composed as she met Shi Feng's gaze. She deliberately paused just long enough for questions to form in their minds, and she knew Shi Feng and Hulina were brimming with curiosity. "At the end of 1 month," she began, "I will arrange a death trial for the two of you. One you must face together. If you succeed, you will be hailed as the holy son and holy maiden of this generation of Wuhandian. And Shi Feng, once you've passed the trial, you'll be free to travel to the Heaven Dew Empire whenever you wish." Shi Feng's heart skipped. A death trial? So soon? He'd assumed he'd have to wait years for such an honor, much like Hulina had after the Soul Master competition. Yet here was Bibi Dong, offering him a chance to prove himself at the infamous killing capital. Hulina's eyes flickered with excitement. "Teacher, where exactly will this trial take place?" Bibi Dong's lips curved into a thin smile. "In the slaughter capital, a lawless place where only the ruthless survive. Criminals, outcasts, and fallen warriors roam its streets. No rules, no mercy. If you make it through unscathed, the sect will recognize you both as its true champions." Shi Feng exchanged a glance with Hulina. The slaughter capital was legendary, a crucible that tested every ounce of will and skill. He tightened his grip on his sword hilt. "We understand, teacher. We won't let you down." "Good," Bibi Dong replied, her voice steely. "Train harder than ever. In 30 days, I expect nothing less than perfection." As she turned and swept out of the chamber, Shi Feng and Hulina were left to absorb the weight of her words. The path to becoming the holy son and holy maiden ran straight through the heart of darkness, and neither of them could afford to falter. They called the survivors the Fallen. "In Slaughter City, you can kill and indulge as you please," Bibi Dong said, her voice low. "If you're strong enough, everything is yours, except your soul skills. They're completely nullified inside. Even a titled Douluo could be betrayed and cut down by some low-level soul master. Shi Feng's heart clenched, and Hu Liana went ashen. A place where even titled Douluos fall. Could anyone hope to live through it? Bibi Dong gave a rueful sigh. We tried to mimic Slaughter City's trials in our Spirit Hall training camps, but those exercises are pale imitations. The real city forges warriors. Survive it, and the rewards are beyond imagination. You could awaken a growth-killing god domain. At the mention of domains, Hu Liana's slender frame trembled. As Bibi Dong's disciple, she knew exactly what that meant. A domain skill only appears when a soul master reaches the titled Douluo realm, the 9th soul ability, and even then it manifests only one time in 10. Domain-type soul skills, also called top-tier soul abilities, are rarely seen before one reaches the rank of titled Douluo, unless they're the very essence of a martial soul. When activated, such a domain amplifies the user's power while suppressing that of anyone within its bounds. Properly wielded, its effect is downright terrifying, and as its master grows in strength, the domain itself evolves in tandem. Bibi Dong regarded Shi Feng thoughtfully. You've shown exceptional talent, but you're not truly powerful yet. The moment you emerge from that place, however, you'll already be counted among the strong. Her expression turned grave. The death rate there is extraordinarily high. I had no intention of sending you into it, but Spirit Hall's power has been rising at an unprecedented pace. The unification of the mainland draws near, and I need you to grow stronger, quickly. She paused, eyes flicking to the two young disciples standing before her. Inside the city of slaughter, your best hope is to watch each other's backs. Stick together, and you'll have a fighting chance. Shi Feng met her gaze firmly. Teacher, I'm ready to go. Beside him, Hu Liana squeezed her staff in determination. I'm with him. Let's do this. The three stood in silence for a moment, the weight of what lay ahead settling over them. In the crimson haze of dawn, Shi Feng and Hu Liana prepared to enter the city of slaughter, a crucible of blood and despair that would either forge them into true warriors or consume them entirely. She'd been a little frightened at first, but knowing Shi Feng would face every trial with her quickly banished her fear. The very thought of entering the legendary killing god domain now filled her with eager anticipation. Very good, Bibi Dong said, smiling. In Wuhan City, we have several soul masters renowned for their mastery of close-quarters combat and assassination techniques. I'll have them arrive tomorrow to give you specialized training. Shi Feng met her gaze steadily. Teacher, my soul power has just broken through to the 40th level. I want to claim my soul ring and then push on toward the soul sect realm. 40th level already? Bibi Dong's eyes widened in disbelief. She reached out, grasped Shi Feng's hand, and closed her eyes, drawing in his aura. A moment later, she released him, shock written all over her beautiful face. Just 10 days ago, he'd been at level 36. How had he leapt 4 levels so quickly? Hu Liana's bright laugh rang out. I've broken through to level 48 myself. The two newfound breakthroughs set the small training hall buzzing with excitement. Tomorrow's preparations in Wuhan City promised to be the first step on a journey none of them would soon forget. Bibi Dong stared at him, her eyes wide with astonishment. How did you manage that? Shi Feng bowed his head respectfully. Master, every celestial herb I gathered from the Bingwo Liangyi ruins was chosen specifically to reinforce one's foundation and enhance soul power. None of them carries side effects. He reached into his pack and pulled out a single, carefully wrapped bundle. Unfurling the vines encircling its base revealed a solitary flower, a tulip whose petals gleamed like burnished gold. As soon as it opened, its rich, honeyed fragrance filled the chamber. Bibi Dong leaned forward, curiosity lighting her features. What is this? She asked. She'd glimpsed countless auras of medicinal herbs when they first arrived at the ruins, yet she'd never noticed this particular specimen. Shi Feng offered her a gentle smile. This is the Chiluo tulip, also known as the celestial tulip. Its vines draw nourishment from the earth, while its blossom soaks up the essence of heaven. Once ingested, it allows the user to absorb the very brilliance of sun and moon, accelerating one's cultivation and soul refinement. He paused, letting the scent of the tulip swirl between them. I chose it especially for you, Master. Its elegance and power befit your status and your talents. Bibi Dong's astonishment softened into a pleased, almost proud smile. She reached out deliberately, as if touching the tulip might confirm its reality, and Shi Feng knew in that moment that he right seed had finally taken root. Here's a polished version of your line, with the protagonist now named Shi Feng, male. You've already reached the strength of a titled Douluo. While the medicinal essence it contains won't grant you an immediate breakthrough, it will certainly boost the pace of your future cultivation. If you share the rest of the chapter, I can carry on and rewrite it into smooth, idiomatic English for you. Bibi Dong accepted the precious fairy grass with a delighted smile, her eyes alight with admiration. Xiaofeng, I truly don't know how to thank you, she said, lifting her gaze to Shi Feng. Over time, this young disciple had grown closer to her than even Hulina, and the thought deeply moved her. Master, there's no need for thanks, Shi Feng replied gently. Just absorb it quickly. We'll keep you safe. Nodding, Bibi Dong crossed the room and settled onto a nearby divan. Shi Feng stepped forward and explained, You can't swallow this herb whole. Instead, press your lips to the stamen and draw out its golden sap slowly. Then use your soul power to guide that essence through your meridians so its effects spread evenly through your limbs and bones. Understood, she whispered. With practiced grace, Bibi Dong brought her red lips to the glowing stamen and began to draw in its essence. A few breaths later, the sap was gone. She closed her eyes and focused inward, channeling her soul power to refine the herb's potency. Almost at once, a refined, majestic aura blossomed around her, an aura befitting a master who had long reigned in the highest circles of cultivation. Chapter 132, Becoming a Stand-in Master. The glow of the enchanted tulip intensified, its soft radiance washing over them both. Let's wait here for a bit, Shi Feng said. With the master's power at work, she shouldn't be unconscious much longer. Hulina nodded, and they found a comfortable spot to sit. No more than half an hour passed before Bibi Dong's eyelids fluttered open. She stood and approached them with the serene smile of a goddess returned to life. Perfectly applied makeup framed her face, and her every movement, graceful and composed, spoke of imperial nobility. Shi Feng and Hulina stared, utterly captivated. In that moment, ruler of a nation seemed too modest a description. Her regal bearing emanated an almost divine allure. Teacher, you're so beautiful, Hulina blurted, unable to tear her eyes away. Shi Feng hurried to agree. Had Bibi Dong not been Chan Renshui's mother, he feared he might already be smitten beyond hope. After all, was there any woman, especially one worshipped as the revered Pope, who didn't take care of her appearance? Bibi Dong clearly spared no effort in presenting herself flawlessly. Bibi Dong seldom let anyone, no matter how close, see her darker side unless it was absolutely necessary. Feng, she said, her eyes bright, ever since you absorbed that fairy grass, your cultivation speed has improved tremendously. A pleased smile curved her lips. Her disciple never failed to exceed her expectations. She studied the tall, handsome youth before her, and in that moment, her decision was made. Nana, you may go. I need to speak with Shi Feng alone. Of course, teacher. Though Hulina's curiosity burned, she wondered what her master had planned for Shi Feng. She dared not question Bibi Dong. With a respectful bow, she slipped out of the room and gently closed the door behind her. Once they were alone, Bibi Dong turned her full attention to Shi Feng. Shi Feng paused, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead as he knelt beside the small wooden box. Xiao Chen, Bibi Dong began hesitantly, you still have some of that spirit fairy grass, don't you? He nodded and lifted a handful of silvery green shoots. Yes, I saved a few. Bibi Dong's cheeks tinted pink. She cleared her throat. I was wondering if I could trouble you for another sprig. Shi Feng tucked the herbs back into the box and looked up, curiosity in his eyes. Is this for Sister Xuer? Her relief was obvious as she smiled gently. Exactly. She's one of our spirit hall's brightest prodigies, and her current mission is critical. That grass could help her recover more quickly. Shi Feng returned her smile. You really care about her well-being. Bibi Dong nodded, the earlier awkwardness melting away. Since he'd proven himself trustworthy, Shi Feng realized she no longer treated him with the chilly formality of before. Now that their bond as strengthening, she felt free to ask him for favors, safe in the knowledge that he would never refuse. And in that moment, Shi Feng felt a warm satisfaction. Not only was he valued by the spirit hall, he had earned Bibi Dong's genuine friendship. Bibi Dong exhaled softly, the fight gone from her eyes. "Shi Feng," she said, voice low, "do you honestly think you can repair things between me and Shuer?" Shi Feng met her gaze without flinching. "Teacher, a rift between mother and daughter doesn't appear out of nowhere. Shuer has never wronged you. Why deny the bond you share with her?" A flash of pain crossed Bibi Dong's face. "Shi Feng, please stop. You can't know what this feels like." He shook his head gently. "I may not understand every detail of your suffering, but dwelling on the past won't heal you. We can't change what's already happened, only shape what comes next. The relationship between you and Shuer is precious. Embracing it could be the most beautiful thing you do." He paused, letting his words settle. "If you refuse to open your heart, that wound will only deepen. And I'll bear that sorrow with you. The longer things remain as they are, the more painful it becomes for everyone involved. If you like, I can be your most loyal listener," Bibi Dong said softly, her voice trembling. "Pour out all your pain to me. I swear it will ease my heart just to hear you." "Xiao Feng, please don't." She tried to speak, but her words broke into tears. "All right, I won't say another word." Shi Feng fell silent. He knew that when someone's wounds ran deep, the only remedy was patience and small reassurances. "Come, sit with me," she whispered. Obediently, Shi Feng sat down beside her. Bibi Dong reached out and gently took his hand. "Now turn around," she instructed. Unsure of her plan but trusting her completely, Shi Feng obeyed. The moment he faced away, her arms slipped over his broad shoulders, and she pressed her cheek against his back, seeking the steady warmth only he could give. Shi Feng felt the fabric of his robe grow damp against his back as Bibi Dong's head dipped and rose in small, unsteady motions. He froze. A single blow had wounded her so deeply that this iron-willed imperious pontiff, who brooked no opposition, couldn't prevent tears from welling in her eyes. And rather than pull away, she remained close to him, bearing a vulnerability she never showed anyone else. It was clear now. He was the one she trusted most. The thought shook him. Could this finally loosen her attachment to Qian Renshui? Bibi Dong inhaled sharply, as if gathering her courage, then whispered, "Xiao Gang, if you were here now, it would be so much easier." Shi Feng couldn't suppress a rueful smile. Women sought a shoulder to lean on when they felt powerless. But he wasn't Xiao Gang. He was nothing more than a stand-in, a proxy chosen by her teacher to fill another's place. How could he ever hope to inspire the kind of loyalty and love that Yu Xiaogang had earned? And yet, standing there in the rain with Bibi Dong's tears hot against the cold wind, he realized he wouldn't mind trying. Bibi Dong's expression darkened, her eyes flashing with unmistakable hatred. "I've never forgotten you," she spat, "but you moved on so quickly, turning your affections to my little sister instead." Shi Feng felt a chill run down his spine. He could practically taste the bone-deep loathing in her voice. What if she truly believed he was Yu Xiaogang's accomplice, ready to betray her at any moment? Inwardly, he sighed. Love and hate are two sides of the same coin, and a woman's heart, it seemed, was endlessly complex. Still, no matter how fierce her anger, Shi Feng reminded himself that Bibi Dong was a remarkable teacher, far more honorable than that scheming Yu Xiaogang. He'd have to settle affairs with Yu before he could hope to repair things with Bibi Dong. After a long moment, Bibi Dong turned on her heel and stormed off. Shi Feng didn't dare follow. He knew she wouldn't want him to witness her vulnerable side. "Teacher," he called softly once she'd put some distance between them, "a few days ago in Tiando City, I ran into Shuer, and I gave her a spirit herb. She's now reached level 58 Soul King." Bibi Dong froze in her tracks. "You found her? How?" Shi Feng offered a wry smile and shook his head. "That, teacher, is a secret I'd rather keep." "Yes," Bibi Dong replied softly. "Shi Feng, thank you." "Teacher, I'm both your disciple and your kin," he said, bowing his head. Bibi Dong's face relaxed back into its usual calm, the only sign of strain the faint redness around her eyes. She rose and led the way to a seemingly ordinary corner of the room. With a discreet press on a hidden switch, the thick stone floor slid aside, revealing a narrow staircase that plunged into pitch-black darkness. Shi Feng peered over the edge. The steps were steep, and the bottom was lost in shadow. Yet the air drifting up carried a strange, powerful energy. "Come on." Bibi Dong called, lifting a brass lamp. Its flame cast flickering patterns as she descended. Shi Feng followed close behind, curiosity quickening his pace. "Teacher, what's down here?" he asked, his voice echoing lightly against the stone walls. From below, Bibi Dong's calm voice drifted upward. "This is where I do my cultivation." Shi Feng's eyes widened. He'd expected a hidden storage room or a secret passage, but an entire training chamber carved beneath the floor, and that unusual aura. Suddenly, all his suspicions began to fall into place. Chapter 133. Rakshasa Inheritance. A heavy veil of malice and resentment clung to the air as Shi Feng descended deeper into the cavern. His senses, finely tuned to the ebb and flow of hostile energy, prickled with anticipation. Could this hidden shrine be where the Rakshasa god's legacy lies buried? He exchanged a curious glance with Bibi Dong, who led the way without a word. Such a secret place should have remained her most closely guarded mystery, so why had she brought him here and revealed its existence? Breaking the silence at last, Shi Feng halted on a narrow ledge hewn into the stone wall. "Master, this place is so clandestine," he began, voice low. "Why have you brought me here?" Bibi Dong paused but did not turn. Her tone was steady, almost gentle. "Your martial spirit harbors a deep well of darkness and resentment, not unlike my own. The Rakshasa god's inheritance is bound to that very hatred. By training here, you will draw on the ambient malice and accelerate your cultivation." He frowned, trying to absorb her words. "You brought me here to harness that evil energy?" She inclined her head. "Precisely. But you must promise me one thing. This place must remain our secret. Only you and I may ever know of it." Shi Feng bowed respectfully. "I swear it will stay between us." A surge of gratitude warmed him. That Bibi Dong would entrust him with such a profound secret spoke volumes of her faith in him, and stirred within him a renewed resolve to prove himself worthy. Shi Feng clenched his fists as he walked. "Aside from my senior sister and Shuer, teacher is the most important person in my life. No one must ever harm her," he vowed under his breath. After another 100 meters, the winding stone staircase abruptly ended, and the corridor opened into a colossal cavern. The ceiling soared out of sight, and the air felt heavy with anticipation. Shi Feng paused, recalling the orders he'd issued not long ago. "This must be the lower cavern," he thought. "That's why I had the new papal palace constructed down here." He stepped into the immense space and followed the gently sloping floor as it led him deeper still. The passage curved downward for nearly 500 meters before leveling off, and then it descended another half-kilometer. Finally, the tunnel gave way to a breathtaking hall. 36 thick, ebony pillars lined both sides of the chamber, their smooth surfaces reflecting the faint, eerie glow of hidden lanterns. At the very center stood a colossal statue, towering over 10 meters tall. It took the shape of a fearsome warrior with a blue, snarling visage and long, razor-sharp fangs. Its armor was a deep, bruised purple, and from its broad back jutted 4 gigantic sickles, 2 on each side, curving outward like menacing claws. An oppressive aura of dark energy pulsed around the figure, making Shi Feng's heart pound at the sheer intensity of its evil presence. Shi Feng froze the moment he stepped into the chamber. Before him stood a colossal statue whose mere presence pressed down on him like a suffocating vice. Its eyes seemed alive, drilling into his mind with a cruel, overwhelming force. Bibi Dong's face drained of color. She darted forward and planted herself between Shi Feng and the statue. "Fenger, if you can't stand this, we should fall back," she urged, voice tight with worry. At that instant, the corpse pill sealed in Shi Feng's dantian shifted on its own. A fierce pressure, every bit as potent as the statue's, erupted from his body. Bibi Dong staggered backward, finally stopping at the statue's pedestal, eyes wide with shock. A black tide of resentment surged out from Shi Feng, crashing headlong into the statue's oppressive aura. He stared at himself in disbelief. Had the pill developed its own consciousness? Mere provocation had been enough to unleash such a violent backlash. Under the pill's onslaught, the statue recoiled. Dark ichor oozed from its cracks, pooling at its feet like living shadow. That malignant energy throbbed in the air, a testament to the statue's brutal, unholy power, and to the unexpected might of the corpse pill within Shi Feng. A 3-meter-tall phantom drifted out of the swirling black mist, its shrill laughter tearing through the air with an almost tangible gloom. The moment Bibi Dong laid eyes on it, her face blanched and her knees weakened as if compelled to bow. She stumbled backward, and only when some distance opened did the oppressive urge recede. Unlike the grotesque statue they had faced earlier, this specter appeared human, yet its presence was equally fearsome. It hovered silently, its malevolent gaze locking onto Shi Feng. Under that stare, his scalp tingled, and a crushing pressure forced him to retreat, until the mysterious corpse pill nestled in his body flared to life, rooting him in place and shielding him from the phantom's coercion. Ha! Ha! The phantom's eerie laughter echoed as it sent a probing thought racing toward Shi Feng's mind, intent on seeing through him. In response, the corpse pill quivered, unleashing a shockwave of spiritual force that repelled the intruder's divine sense. Nice little one. It's a pity there's an heir. Otherwise, you'd be the perfect successor to my divine seat. Strange, is there truly a god in the god realm so much like me? With those final words, the spectral figure dissolved, and the corpse pill within Shi Feng went quiet. To his astonishment, the statue's crushing aura had vanished as well. Could this be the remnant of God Rakshasa's divine consciousness, left behind when he departed the Douluo continent? Shi Feng wondered. He hurried to Bibi Dong's side. Her brows were slick with sweat, and her robes hung heavy and damp. "Teacher, are you all right?" Bibi Dong shook her head, her eyes still wide with fear as they darted back to the statue. In all her years studying this inheritance, she'd never witnessed such an apparition. Its malevolent aura mirrored the statue's energy, yet felt infinitely more sinister. She had her suspicions about the phantom's true nature, but how it had come to be, she couldn't begin to explain. Shi Feng gazed at the pale, shimmering figure floating before them. "Teacher, what is that phantom?" he asked. Bibi Dong let out a relieved sigh. "It seems to be a lingering consciousness, an imprint left behind by a supreme god when he departed the Douluo continent. Its purpose is to guide those it deems worthy, to help them inherit his power." Shi Feng studied the faint aura circling the ghostly form. "So it's not hostile," he concluded. "Exactly." Bibi Dong nodded. "Why don't you try cultivating right here? You might tap into its divine energy and accelerate your progress." He shook his head skeptically. "I already carry the Rakshasa god's inheritance. I can't imagine another godly remnant would aid my training." Still, he drew himself into a meditation posture and focused on absorbing the ambient energy. Not even a minute passed before Shi Feng rose, looking mildly exasperated. "It's no good, teacher. This spot actually slows me down. The energy of moonlight, so crucial to my cultivation, can't penetrate this deep underground." Bibi Dong's face fell with genuine regret. "I thought the god's spiritual remnant would boost your progress. I'm sorry for the poor advice." Page 174. "Teacher, it's all right. Let's head upstairs," Shi Feng said. He followed Bibi Dong down the corridor, then glanced back at the towering statue behind them. He'd heard that Bibi Dong's divine inheritance was unique, far more demanding than any other god's, and that it seeped in slowly, almost imperceptibly, over a long period. As they walked, Bibi Dong said, "If you ever need anything when I'm up there, just come down and find me." "Understood." Before long, they returned to Bibi Dong's private quarters. She paused in the doorway and turned to him. "Here's the arrangement. Skip tomorrow's special training. I'll send Elder Ju and Elder Gi with you to claim your 4th soul ring." "Thank you, teacher. If there's nothing else, I'll head back now." "All right," Bibi Dong replied. "Go on. I need to freshen up." She brushed away the last beads of sweat, revealing her elegant form. Shi Feng felt his cheeks heat with embarrassment. He dared not stare, so he bowed and slipped out of the room. Outside, Hulina hovered a short distance away, her gaze drifting toward Bibi Dong's doorway every few seconds. Shi Feng approached her with a friendly smile. "Senior sister, what are you doing here?" he asked. Hulina turned to him, curiosity shining in her eyes. "What did teacher say to you that took so long?" she asked. "It's nothing," Shi Feng said lightly. "My master's martial spirit is much like mine, so he taught me a few cultivation techniques." Hulina blushed, slipping her arm through his. "Shi Feng, I really want to help my brother find a fairy herb." Her large, luminous eyes looked up at him pleadingly, and the soft brush of her hand sent an unfamiliar thrill through Shi Feng. He managed a nonchalant shrug. "Easier said than done. Good fairy herbs don't grow on trees." "Brother?" Juliana cocked her head. You called him uncle before. Why? Shi Feng cleared his throat. It's just what big brothers call each other, nothing more. Chapter 134. Shi Feng gently freed his arm from Huliena's embrace. Come on. He strode purposefully toward the Elder Hall at the heart of the sect. With the Soul Beast battle looming tomorrow, he wasn't sure how long he'd be gone. The sooner he delivered Xiaoxue's immortal elixir, the better. After all, Xiaoxue, one of the Wuhun sect's golden generation, was only marginally less gifted than Huliena. As Shi Feng neared the gates of Wuhan City, a familiar aura brushed against his senses, a presence he once thought lost. Jing Wuming. Though he'd felt it a moment ago, his detour to visit Bibi Dong kept him from confronting it until now. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, Shi Feng pushed open the enormous hall doors. Whatever lay ahead, he was ready to face it. Meanwhile, Jing Wuming sat alone in the Elder Hall, awaiting the final rites of his induction. His keen eyes followed every ritual movement, but his mind was on Notting City's underground assassin network. Could it really be an offshoot of the Wuhun Temple? After all, why else would one of the temple's most feared enforcers be drawn into the city's shadows? Elsewhere, Shi Feng and Huliena strode together into Xiaoxue's private chambers. Xiaoxue was still immersed in her cultivation practice, her breathing steady and eyes closed in concentration. Before today, her cultivation level had already reached 45. Once she absorbed the fairy grass he'd supplied earlier, she would be flirting with level 50. Now, in Shi Feng's hand lay the strange velvet Babel chrysanthemum, a legendary herb famed for shattering cultivation bottlenecks. When Xiaoxue finally opened her eyes and learned of the chrysanthemum's true power, gratitude lit up her face. She bowed repeatedly, thanking Shi Feng again and again, as if her words alone could repay the debt. He merely offered a polite nod, then excused himself and left without waiting to watch her consume it. The moment the door slid shut, Xiaoxue turned to Huliena, excitement dancing in her eyes. "Sister," she whispered, "what do you think of Shi Feng?" Huliena's cheeks flushed a soft rose. She glanced away, then met Xiaoxue's gaze with a shy smile. What do you mean?" she murmured. Xiaoxue's lips curved into a teasing grin, her usual dignified air gone. "You know exactly what I mean," she purred. Huliena tossed her head, feigning irritation even as her smile grew. "Oh, stop it, you're horrible," she chided, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Then, lowering her voice, she added with a conspiratorial wink, "But between you and me, Shi Feng and I really do have feelings for each other." Xiaoxue laughed softly, the sound echoing in the quiet room. "I knew it," she said. "Just don't make me regret playing matchmaker." Sunlight streamed through the lattice windows, painting the polished wooden floor with dancing patterns. In that warm glow, the bond between the three of them, bound by gratitude, friendship, and something more, felt as strong as any cultivation breakthrough. And high above, in the Elder Hall, Jing Wuming's questions waited for answers that could reshape their world. Since childhood, Xiaoxue, her eldest brother, had watched over Huliena more like a parent than a sibling. So when he broached the subject, she couldn't help but flush with embarrassment. "That's good," Xiaoxue said, exhaling in relief. "Now I can relax. You should hurry back and strengthen your bond with him. Don't worry about the fairy grass. I'll handle gathering it myself." "All right," Huliena agreed, rising. She stepped out of the courtyard and made her way back. Meanwhile, Shi Feng followed the guiding aura in his heart until he arrived at a large, walled estate. Inside, Jing Wuming sat deep in meditation. The instant he sensed Shi Feng's summons, he sprang to his feet, joy lighting his face, and rushed to the door. "Master, why have you come?" Jing Wuming exclaimed in surprise. "Come in," Shi Feng invited, stepping across the threshold. "We have much to discuss." A moment later, the two were seated together in the quiet interior. Shi Feng stared at Jing Wuming, a twinge of emotion stirring in his chest. He never imagined that his very first recruit would resurface here, in Wuhan City. "Tell me," he said quietly, "this assassin organization you serve, does it answer to the Wuhan Palace?" Jing Wuming nodded. "Yes, I only discovered the connection later. After more than 4 years of grueling training, I rose to the top among the so-called assassin seeds, recruited from various cities, and was finally taken in as an apprentice by Elder Ghost." Suddenly, Shi Feng understood. Every city hosted not only a branch of the Wuhun Palace, but also a shadowy faction assigned to clear the palace's obstacles. These assassin cells were all run by Ghost Douluo himself, Elder Ghost. Given Jing Wuming's remarkable aptitude, it made perfect sense that he had earned the Elder's favor. True, Jing Wuming's twin Wuhun spirits weren't among the most formidable, but the very fact that he bore two distinct spirits was rare. Even the venerable Wuhun Temple had yet to conduct a comprehensive study on twin spirits. Shi Feng recalled reading a classified palace dossier. Only when both parents possessed Wuhun spirits of closely matched quality could they produce a child endowed with twin Wuhun. And now, standing before him, was living proof. Twin spirits are one of the rarest mutations on Douluo continent. Normally, even two relatively weak spirits can sometimes combine and give birth to a twin spirit. The resultant strength depends on the power of those parent spirits. Though mysterious, twin spirits vary widely in capability. Jing Wuming's pair aren't the very strongest, yet they've still allowed his innate spirit power to reach level 8, no small achievement. The Spirit Hall's current master, after so many years away, would never have guessed twin spirits existed in the past century if he hadn't met Tang San. Shi Feng smiled, hefting the weight of his recent promotion. I'm officially the Pope's disciple now. Congratulations, Jing Wuming replied, returning the smile. In the 4 years since they first met, both young men had grown immensely. Though just 14, Jing Wuming already looked nearer 18, his thin frame honed into a refined strength. Shi Feng studied his friend's expression for a moment before asking, "What's your cultivation level now?" 35, Jing Wuming answered without hesitation. Nodding in approval, Shi Feng reached into his pocket and produced a single herb. It was a 9-leaf purple Ganoderma, known as the 9-pin Ziji, one of the most prized recovery medicines in existence. He held it out to Jing Wuming, its faint violet glow promising a powerful boon to his cultivation. Shi Feng gently plucked the Ganoderma lucidum off its stem and handed it to Jing Wuming. Eat this. It'll help your cultivation. Jing Wuming nodded without hesitation, popped the mushroom into his mouth, and chewed it quickly before swallowing. Shi Feng rose to his feet. Ganoderma lucidum is mild in nature, he explained. This 9th-grade purple variety should raise your soul power by several levels. Take your time to let it refine within you. He offered a faint smile. If I need you again, I'll call, and from now on, feel free to address me by name, even in front of others. With that said, Shi Feng turned and strode away. He was in a hurry. Another appointment awaited him at the foot of Pope's Mountain. Before emerging from Bibi Cavern, he had already sent word to Xiaoxue to meet him there. True to form, she arrived swiftly and was waiting patiently by the mountain's base. Thank you for waiting. Shi Feng greeted her as he descended the final steps. He produced a small jade box from his robes. The moment he lifted its lid, a heady orchid fragrance swept out, clear and enlivening. I brought you some fairy orchid grass, he said, offering the box to her. It's fresh, harvested just this morning. Xiaoxue inhaled deeply, her eyes brightening at the scent. In the world of cultivation, such ingredients were treasures few possessed. Shi Feng watched her reaction with a calm expression, knowing this gift would greatly aid her refinement and strengthen the bond of trust between them. Shi Feng held out a jade box. Inside the box floated an 8-petaled orchid, each petal a trembling, snow-white crystal that seemed to glow with purity. He explained its properties carefully, and Zhao Yuyui's eyes shone with excitement as she reached for it. Thank you, master, she breathed, clutching the box as if it were her most precious treasure. Shi Feng's expression turned serious. Hurry back to your workshop, he instructed. Use this in your alchemy the moment you arrive. Zhao Yue tucked the jade box safely away, cast him a mock pout, and bounded off like a startled deer. Back at the residence, Hu Lina was waiting in the courtyard. Where did you vanish to? She asked, narrowing her eyes. Just went for a walk, Shi Feng replied casually. Hu Lina sniffed the air. A walk, huh? You smell like you've been hanging around that little vixen, Zhao Yue. Shi Feng blinked. He'd barely spoken to her, yet apparently her fragrance clung to him. He could only shrug, a rueful smile tugging at his lips. I was just passing by. At the foot of the mountain, Shi Feng spotted Hu Lina walking past and seized the moment to strike up a casual conversation. He dared not let slip the truth. If Lena learned that Zhao Yoyue was really his maid, she'd never stop peppering him with questions. So before she could probe any further, he gently steered her back toward her quarters. "Get back to your training," he urged. "You still have traces of the medicine in your system that haven't fully absorbed. If you can break through to Soul King before we head for the slaughter capital, your odds of survival will improve dramatically." Lena's expression darkened. "Do not disturb my cultivation for a full month," she warned, then slammed the door behind her. Left alone outside her room, Shi Feng couldn't help but smile wryly. "Disturb your cultivation?" he muttered under his breath. Retreating to his own chamber, he retrieved a single stalk of fairy grass from his satchel. The herb was a vivid green, yet at its heart nestled 3 pure white leaves, each cradling a droplet that gleamed like fresh morning dew. Carefully, he prepared to consume it himself. Every precious drop of power would count in the battles ahead. Shi Feng held the herb up to the light, admiring its silvery green leaves. "This is Wangchuan Chu Shuilu," he whispered. "Once ingested, it refines the eyes, granting a piercing gaze that can see through illusions and hidden barriers. As an auxiliary immortal herb, it won't directly boost my physical strength, but that's exactly why it's safe to use. I've already absorbed the blood ginseng, so taking another herb that enhances raw power would be unwise. This supportive fairy grass, however, poses no conflict with my current cultivation." Chapter 135, The Fourth Soul Ring. He was utterly fascinated by the notion of an all-seeing gaze, an eye capable of penetrating every deception and unmasking all illusions. Such a power verged on the divine, and Shi Feng would be lying if he said he wasn't tempted. Yet he also knew it lay far beyond his current reach. Still, he couldn't shake the memory of Tang San's breakthrough. After absorbing the long-sighted autumn dew, his Ziji demon eye had ascended to a new tier, granting him perception so keen he could even see through Xiaowu's true form. Perhaps, Shi Feng thought, a mere taste of this elixir would sharpen his own vision. With resolve, he plucked a single Wangchuan autumn dew leaf from the stand. Lifting it to his lips, he inhaled, drawing the remaining droplets of crystalline liquid into his mouth. The instant the dew vanished, the leaf withered and turned to ash. "Incredible," he whispered. Settling into a proper cultivation stance, Shi Feng closed his eyes and began to refine the dew's potent essence, eager to discover how far his sight and his soul might expand. Shi Feng closed his eyes as he drew in the last few drops of the mysterious liquid. Instead of settling in his stomach, the fluid crystallized into an icy energy that surged straight for his eyes. A soothing chill spread through his vision, more comforting than anything he'd ever felt. In his mind's eye, he watched the energy seep into every corner of his sight, as if it were repairing and upgrading him from the inside out. 3 hours passed before dawn touched the sky. Emerging from his cultivation stance, Shi Feng blinked against the darkness. Where the radiant aura had once swirled around his eyes, there was only stillness now. Every mote of energy had been absorbed. "It's done," he murmured, heart pounding with anticipation. He opened his eyes, and the night exploded into razor-sharp clarity. Distant mountains took on crisp outlines, swaying treetops revealed each individual leaf. Even hundreds of meters away, the intricate feather patterns of resting birds stood out as if drawn in ink. Shi Feng's breath caught. Amazing. Turning his gaze toward the wall, he thought of Hu Liana's room on the other side. His pulse quickened as he silently urged himself, "Focus, focus." But in truth, he no longer needed to strain. Everything before him was already in perfect, unerring detail. Shi Feng popped the last petal of the fairy herb into his mouth and waited for the promised boost to his vision. A stinging heat roamed his eyes, but when he peered at the solid stone wall before him, nothing changed. He blinked wildly, yet still couldn't see through the barrier. "So much for sharp eyes and see-through," he muttered, tossing the herb aside. "All it does is extend your range. No true X-ray vision here. This fairy herb isn't worth a damn." Turning to the floating system interface, he noted 3 unused soul ring upgrade coupons. Each coupon could elevate a spirit ring to the 3-year grade. Before dawn, Shi Feng planned to head into the spirit beast wilds, harvest 3 new rings, and immediately apply the coupons to upgrade his first 3 rings to 3 years apiece. Once that was done, all he'd need was a 4-year spirit beast for his 4th ring. The next morning, Shi Feng awoke to find his first 3 spirit rings now glowing with 3-year energies. After a brisk shower, he slipped from his chamber. Breakfast had already been laid out by the manor's servants. Pausing at Hulina's door, he peeked inside and saw her deep in meditation. He didn't want to break her concentration, so he quietly took his meal and slipped out the front gates, ready to begin the day's hunt. An hour later, in the grand audience chamber of the Pope's palace, Platinum Bishop Bibi Dong rose from her throne and swiftly concluded the meeting. Draped in a luxurious black robe inlaid with gold and crowned with a 9-arched purple-gold diadem, she radiated an imposing, almost transcendent aura. Douluo and Ghost Douluo, standing at attention before her, exchanged awe-ed glances. Surely Her Holiness's cultivation had advanced yet again. Elder Jew, Elder Ghost, Bibi Dong commanded, voice steady and clear. I leave Shi Feng's safety and training in your hands. Douluo bowed deeply. You have our word, Your Holiness. We will see him through. Excellent, Bibi Dong replied, inclining her head once. With that, she dismissed them. Outside the palace gates, Douluo and Ghost Douluo fell into step beside Shi Feng. Though his pace was surprisingly swift, he still lacked the raw speed of a titled Douluo. To maintain their urgent pace toward the Stardo Great Forest, the 2 elder Douluo took turns hoisting him onto their broad shoulders. Together, one carrying Shi Feng, the other forging ahead, they sprinted off, bound for the borders of Wuhan City and the mysteries that awaited in the forest beyond. By mid-afternoon, they reached the borders of the Stardo Great Forest. Without pausing for rest, Shi Feng and his 2 companions pressed straight into the dense wood. From sunset until deep in the night, they scoured the forest for a worthy spirit beast, but nothing appeared. It wasn't until the following noon that destiny finally showed its hand. With a heavy thud, a grotesque creature was dumped at Shi Feng's feet, barely clinging to life. It looked like a toad, yet its bulk was closer to that of a buffalo, its mottled hide a sickly dark green. Hundreds of fist-sized nodules studded its back, each one wept foul, viscous pus, the rancid stench hanging in the air. Even more unsettling, every pustule concealed a small glowing eye that blinked sporadically in the dim light. This abomination was known as the thousand-eyed demon toad, a spirit beast that sprouts a new eye every 100 years. By the time it reaches a millennium of life, its hide can be studded with well over 1,000 watchful orbs. Yet now, dying and desperate, the creature lay at Shi Feng's mercy, its countless eyes silently pleading for deliverance. Shi Feng wasn't interested in the toad's poison. What fascinated him were its eyes. Each of the thousand-eyed demon toad's gleaming orbs granted it a formidable illusion power, capable of ensnaring prey in a waking nightmare, where every hidden fear grew until escape became impossible. Shi Feng had counted every single eye, and there were well over 300. In the realm of spirit beasts, each 100 eyes signified roughly a year's cultivation, so this creature had reached at least its 3rd year of growth. Fenger, are you sure you want to absorb its soul ring? Grandpa Ju asked, concern lining his voice. This is a genuine spirit beast. Shi Feng offered a confident smile. I can handle it, Grandpa. Pulling a slender, razor-sharp sword from his belt, he kept a safe distance. He had no desire to touch that slimy hide. With a swift, clean strike, he severed one of the toad's spectral limbs. Almost immediately, a ring of deep black energy shot out, wrapping itself around Shi Feng's wrist. The moment it connected, tendrils of dark power surged into his body. This soul ring felt different from any he'd claimed before. Its raw force battered not only his flesh, but his very spirit. He tightened his grip on the hilt, ready for the shockwaves that would test both his strength and his will. Shi Feng's body ached, but he could endure it. The real torment was the mental shock. It clawed at his mind far more fiercely than any physical blow. He soon realized that this strange energy didn't just buffet his spirit, it seeped into his eyes. Whenever it surged there, a piercing cold radiated outward, as sharp and clear as autumn dew under moonlight. Shi Feng knew that chill well. It matched the lingering aura of the grass jelly's power. Had he failed to absorb it fully? Was some of that energy still trapped behind his eyelids? Minutes stretched into hours, each one bringing another wave of psychic pressure. Unpleasant, yes, but not unexpected. Ever since childhood, Shi Feng's mental strength had set him apart. He'd always possessed more spiritual force than other soul masters at his level. That inner fortitude was the very thing that had let him shrug off Hulina's most terrifying charm techniques. Others crumbled under her spells. After one or two encounters, she simply couldn't break him. By the time he finished drawing the last vestiges of the spirit ring into himself, the sun hung low in the sky. Afternoon had come and gone, yet neither he nor his two companions felt ready to stop. Each of them was hungry for more power, each determined to push on until they'd mastered every scrap of energy they could find. Chapter 136. The ugly Bibi Dong night had already fallen by the time they arrived back in Wuhan City. After returning to the Pope's palace, Douluo and Ghost Douluo bid their farewells and departed. Shi Feng set off alone for Bibi Dong's quarters. He'd just absorbed a new soul ring and was preparing for the looming heavenly tribulation that would elevate him to the next realm. During the tribulation and the subsequent recovery period, he would be at his most vulnerable. He needed Bibi Dong's support and protection. Finding her absent from the study, Shi Feng made his way directly to her private chambers. Thanks to his special status, even at this late hour, Bibi Dong's maid did not dare question him. He rapped on the bedroom door and called her name, but there was no reply. Impatient, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was empty. Shi Feng closed the door behind him and found the hidden latch that opened a narrow passage descending beneath the palace. He had guessed correctly. Bibi Dong was below, deep in cultivation. He did not need a lamp. His enhanced vision cut through the darkness like daylight. A few minutes later, he reached the bottom hall. There, in the flickering gloom, he froze. The sight that met his eyes turned his blood to ice. At that moment, Bibi Dong's upper body was sheathed in gleaming purple-black chitin, a matching mask fused to her face, and beneath her human eyes, 4 smaller Sesui orbs had sprouted. Her once slender legs had vanished, replaced by a massive, rounded abdomen. From its edges, 8 thick, jointed limbs unfurled, each bristling with matted green hairs and slick with noxious slime that hissed and sizzled wherever it dripped. In an instant, the poised and elegant girl Shi Feng knew had become a colossal, venomous spider. Shi Feng staggered backward, his heart pounding. He'd long suspected there was something she kept hidden about her martial soul, but he never imagined it would manifest as this grotesque, predatory form. The disconnect between the noble Bibi Dong and this monstrous creature was almost too much to bear. Yet she remained lost in some deep trance, utterly unaware of Shi Feng's presence as he watched, torn between awe and horror. Shi Feng watched, heart pounding, as wisps of foul energy seeped from the statue overhead and flowed into Bibi Dong's prone form. The corrupt aura slid beneath her robes and was absorbed deep into her body. Startled, Shi Feng found a nearby rock, settled himself, and waited in silence. He reminded himself that the birth of a martial spirit could not be forced. No matter how troubling her injuries looked, Bibi Dong was still the beautiful teacher he admired. During the cultivation ritual, muffled groans and the sound of bones stretching drifted through the air. Shi Feng's brow creased with worry. Time seemed to stretch on forever, until at last, Bibi Dong's eyelids fluttered open. Clarity returned to her gaze, and her eyes, alive with a swirl of conflicting emotions, fixed on Shi Feng. She drew a soft, relieved breath. "Turn around," she said, her voice steady and gentle. Shi Feng obeyed. After a heartbeat, the faint click of footsteps alerted him to her approach. Before he could think twice, a calm voice spoke again from just behind him. "Turn around." He pivoted, rising to his feet. There, bathed in the dim glow of the sanctum, stood Bibi Dong, wounded yet radiant, her eyes alight with newfound strength and purpose. Master Bibi Dong had reverted to her usual graceful, aristocratic poise, yet a faint frown still tugged at her brow, and her expression was unreadably complex. She studied Shi Feng intently. "Little Chen," she said softly, "did I frighten you just now?" Shi Feng met her gaze and smiled warmly. "Teacher, one's martial soul is born with them. No one can change its nature. You'll always be the most beautiful presence in my heart." At those words, Bibi Dong's dark eyes brightened, and a flicker of something unspoken passed through them. She recalled a long-ago compliment from another man and sensed genuine sincerity in Shi Feng's praise. A deep satisfaction warmed her chest. "You see through me," she murmured, her lips curving into a gentle smile. All my affection for you wasn't wasted then. She straightened, curiosity shining in her eyes. You've only been gone a short while. What new techniques have you brought back this time? Shi Feng bowed respectfully before Master Bibi Dong. Teacher, I've just absorbed a 3-year-old thousand-eyed toad spirit ring. Its fourth ability is an illusion technique. I call it Mountain of Corpses and Sea of Blood. Bibi Dong's eyes lit up with curiosity. An illusion skill? Go on, cast it on me so I can experience it. All right. Shi Feng steadied his mind and released his martial soul. As he did, a fourth spirit ring appeared on his wrist, glowing a deep, ominous black. Bibi Dong's gaze flicked to the fresh ring in surprise, then softened in understanding. Divine power could indeed extend the life of a soul master's spirit rings. Teacher, be on your guard, Shi Feng warned, though Bibi Dong merely laughed. You worry too much, brat, she teased. Still, she couldn't look away as a blood-red spark kindled in Shi Feng's eyes. With her tremendous spiritual power, she could have shattered the illusion outright, yet she let it take hold. In an instant, the training hall vanished. When Bibi Dong blinked open her eyes again, she stood ankle-deep on a beach. Before her stretched a vast, churning ocean, not of water, but of blood, its surface littered with unending rows of floating corpses. Silence pressed in on her as the stench of decay filled her nostrils. Somewhere in the distance, a low, unearthly moan rose on the crimson tide, and Bibi Dong realized that she had truly stepped into Shi Feng's grim vision, a mountain of corpses before a sea of blood. Bibi Dong reeled as wave after wave of blood, thick, dark, reeking, crashed over her body. Each tide of gore soaked her from head to toe, filling her nostrils with a cloying stench that threatened to make her retch. When she forced herself to look back, her heart jolted. The ground was littered with countless corpses, each twisted in its final agonized death throe. Beyond them rose impossibly high mountains, though, to her horror, she saw they were heaped entirely from human bodies. From that unholy summit poured an all-consuming aura of resentment, a psychic weight that slammed against her mind. Though her spiritual defenses were powerful enough to prevent the hatred from overwhelming her, a flicker of fear still ignited deep within her chest, swelling alarmingly with each pulse of that vengeful energy. She had slain armies, yet nothing she had ever done compared to this nightmarish vision of mountains of corpses and rivers of blood made unsettlingly real. This is an extraordinary illusion, she murmured to herself. It was only her own formidable willpower that kept her grounded here. Were it someone of equivalent cultivation to Shi Feng, they would have long since collapsed in terror and become easy prey for his slaughter. Her formidable mental energy surged, effortlessly piercing Shi Feng's illusion and snapping him back to reality. The phantasmal veil dissolved in an instant, leaving him pale and gasping. Though potent, the illusion technique had exacted a steep price in soul force and could only be invoked once per day. Are you all right? Bibi Dong asked, her voice tight with concern. I'll be fine. Just need a moment to recover. Shi Feng drew a steadying breath. Master, once I absorb the spirit ring, I'll face the next tribulation. I came to ask if you could help me uphold the heavenly law during the crossing. Bibi Dong's eyes darkened as she recalled the terror of his last tribulation. I still haven't gotten over how severe your last calamity was. How could the heavens unleash such a disaster on you? Perhaps they're jealous of your talent. Shi Feng offered a wry smile. Maybe my talent really is too monstrous. In that shared moment, after Bibi Dong had just revealed her martial soul to him, their bond deepened, unspoken, yet unmistakable. Chapter 137. She threw her head back in laughter, then chided him with a smile. I've never met anyone who talks such a big game. Shi Feng grinned. Come by my study first thing tomorrow morning. We'll go over what we missed last time. Sounds good. All right, you head home, she said. I've got to get back to my training. Once Shi Feng reached his room, he stopped and rubbed his eye. His left eyelid was twitching uncontrollably. He frowned. That's odd, he muttered. Whenever I'm about to be struck by lightning, it's always my right eyelid that twitches. Why this one? He shook his head and stepped inside, pondering the strange omen. Page 179. Shi Feng's left eyelid began to twitch, a familiar sign that tomorrow's Tribulation gift pack was about to drop. He frowned and replayed past rewards in his mind. Each time the pack appeared, it seemed perfectly tailored to his next challenge. When he first learned the Lightning Fist and 3000 Thunderstrike, the system granted him advanced boxing and body conditioning techniques, just what he needed to defeat Tang San. Before entering the Icefire Cold Flame trial, it delivered rare alchemical formulas. Was the system secretly reading his thoughts and arranging gifts to fit his situation? Now, standing on the brink of the Slaughter City, he couldn't think of anything he desperately needed. Could this pack hold something tied to that blood-soaked realm? The thought of the Slaughter City, where death and carnage reigned, stirred an odd excitement in him. He'd heard its stories for years, yet now the prospect of witnessing its horrors firsthand thrilled him. That morning, Shi Feng and Lina sat down for breakfast together. Lina wore her sharp, form-fitting battle attire, shoulder plates gleaming, straps secured exactly to her satisfaction. She looked every bit the goddess of war, but Shi Feng noticed dark circles under her eyes. For 2 days straight, she drilled only close-quarters killing techniques, grapples, neck snaps, ricochet strikes against padded dummies. The exhaustion showed on her features, but so did her determination. Shi Feng reached across the table, offering her the steaming bowl of kanji he'd just ladled. "You look like you could use a break." Lina managed a tired smile as she accepted the bowl. "Thanks. I'll need my energy if we're heading into the Slaughter City tomorrow, and who knows what the gift pack will bring." Shi Feng sipped his tea, the warmth spreading through his chest. "Whatever it is, we'll make good use of it." In his mind, he already anticipated tomorrow's surprise, and wondered whether the system truly did know his every need. Shi Feng watched as Lina staggered out of the training chamber, her face flushed with exertion. He couldn't help but grin. "Come on, Lina," he teased, clapping her gently on the shoulder. "Hurry back, or I'll lose my mind waiting." She let out a playful sigh. Fine. If nothing goes wrong, I'll be back before noon." With that, they went their separate ways. Shi Feng made his way to Mistress Bibi Dong's study without pausing. He rapped lightly on the door. "Teacher," he called. Bibi Dong was already standing, as if she'd been expecting him. She gave him a curt nod. "Let's go." They slipped through the hidden passage they'd used before and soon emerged into the cavern behind the waterfall. Instantly, Bibi Dong's 6-winged purple light wings unfurled in a radiant display. Shi Feng responded in kind, summoning his own lightning light wings with a crackle of electric blue energy. Thanks to the medicinal surge from the blood ginseng he'd recently absorbed, Shi Feng's soul power had soared to level 42. The moment he claimed his 4th soul ring, that reservoir of newfound energy propelled him across the threshold to level 43. Most of the 3-year spirit ring's energy went into awakening my 4th spirit talent, but the leftover spark I absorbed was enough to boost my soul power to level 43. Flying felt smoother than ever, and I could cover far greater distances, until, just yards from my destination, my reserves finally gave out. With a graceful swoop, Bibi Dong scooped me up onto her back and carried me the rest of the way. A part of me died of embarrassment. Being hauled across the sky by your own master isn't exactly the epitome of dignity. Our final destination was the mountain's summit. I glanced down at the jagged rocks and noticed faint scorch marks where thunder had struck during my tribulation. Finding a flat boulder, I sat cross-legged and uncorked the elixir Bibi Dong had supplied. Its restorative power far surpassed the pills she'd offered me last time. By the time I drained the vial, my soul power had surged back to its peak. I opened my eyes and bowed respectfully to her. "Master," I said, "I counted 36 lightning strikes in this tribulation." Bibi Dong lifted an amused eyebrow, her lips curling into a knowing smile. 36, she echoed. "You've done well, Shi Feng. Don't worry, I can handle it." Shi Feng reassured Bibi Dong, though he worried she might intervene as she had last time. "Master is watching from the sidelines," he added, hoping to deter her. With a flutter of her wings, Bibi Dong condensed into a streak of purple lightning and vaulted onto the neighboring hill. Shi Feng stood his ground. He had summoned this heavenly tribulation himself, and now the storm answered his call. Thunderbolts cleaved through the air and struck him in rapid succession. Each bolt of divine lightning refined the soul power in his body, already purified by the corpse pill, and compressed it into an even denser, more potent form. The sky seemed to roar as jagged arcs of electricity converged on him, lancing through flesh and bone. To his alarm, the fiercest strikes targeted his eyes, one of the most vulnerable parts of a cultivator's body. In a heartbeat, Shi Feng realized how close he'd come to losing his sight. With every ounce of concentration, he unleashed his soul power in a protective spiral around his eyeballs. The onrushing thunder energy battered against that barrier, sending white-hot pains stabbing through his skull. Yet despite the torment, he never loosened his guard. Bit by bit, the lightning's assault began to wane, its power absorbed and transformed by the superheated core of his soul. As the final bolt fizzled out, Shi Feng took a shuddering breath. His vision remained intact, though his eyes throbbed fiercely, testaments to the ordeal they had just endured. He straightened his shoulders and met Bibi Dong's anxious gaze with a steady nod. "I'm fine," he said, each word strained but resolute. "Let's continue." Shi Feng had never felt pain like this. The searing agony in his eyes far surpassed the torment lightning wrought on his internal organs. From the moment the tribulation began, he'd all but ignored the rest of his body. His sole focus was on preserving his sight. Even his thunder-hardened nerves strained under the intensity, and he fought the urge to howl at the sky. "Why me?" he screamed in his mind. "What did my eyes ever do to deserve this? I've only stolen a few glances at senior sister and Shuer lately. Surely that's no crime." Of course, the heavens remained silent. Over the course of 27 thunderbolts, his flesh and bones had held firm, but his eyeballs felt as if they might shatter at any moment. The instant the storm's fury abated, Shi Feng downed a healing elixir and relied on his innate regenerative gift to stitch his vision back together. Then, before the healing could even finish, the next bolt would strike, and the cycle of pain began anew. Shi Feng's heart pounded with fear. If this next bolt of lightning shattered his eyes completely, would they even be able to regenerate? Thankfully, he'd brought more than enough elixirs, each one refined with the essence drawn from the Icefire Serpent's eyes, and their restorative power was far superior to anything he'd used before. So far, they'd kept him standing, his jaw set like iron as he stared up at the storm clouds roiling overhead. What had once been jet black now glowed with streaks of crimson, radiating a terrifying, oppressive force. Shi Feng knew that the final 9 thunderbolts would be far more powerful than anything he'd faced so far. A deafening crack split the air. A blood-red bolt tore through the sky, striking directly at Shi Feng's head. He braced himself, but could only remain upright for 2 agonizing seconds before crumpling to one knee, then slumping to the ground. From her sheltered vantage, Master Bibi Dongyu's hand flew to her lips. She watched in horror as Shi Feng's eyes, wide with shock, were obliterated, flesh and blood spattering across the stone floor. "Shi Feng!" she cried, tears spilling down her cheeks. Her beloved disciple had been so brutally assaulted by the heavens themselves. If he hadn't warned her to stay back, she would have dashed to his side in an instant. Shi Feng's legs trembled as he forced himself to his feet. Before him stood the hulking figure of the black-armored zombie, its eyeless sockets gaping and bleeding as it tilted its head skyward and issued a bone-chilling roar. Jagged streaks of crimson lightning crackled through the stormy heavens, each bolt striking the earth with deafening thunder, yet the undead warrior never fell. Its defiant howl grew fainter with every flash, but still it stood unbowed. The final red thunderbolt split the sky. In an instant, Bibi Dong was at Shi Feng's side, her face pale with fear. He lay sprawled on the scorched ground, his robes and hair charred pitch black, as though he'd been buried in embers. "Shi Feng, are you all right?" she cried, her voice trembling. He managed a shaky nod. "I'm fine, teacher," he whispered, summoning the last of his strength. The midday sun shone down, but to Shi Feng the world had gone dark. He fought to keep his eyes open, clinging to the only hope he had left, the gift package promised by the system. Every nerve screamed for rest, but he forced himself upright. Gradually, his surroundings faded away, replaced by the familiar expanse of the system's private space. At its center hovered a single, brilliantly wrapped gift box. Without hesitation, Shi Feng reached out and lifted the lid. A blaze of golden light poured forth, revealing 2 items floating within the box. One was a delicate, tear-shaped artifact that gleamed as though carved from liquid sunrise. Heart-pounding, Shi Feng seized the drop-shaped prop in both hands, his pulse alive with renewed possibility. Chapter 138, The Eye of Heaven's Punishment. Bibi Dong hovered on the brink of kneeling, her heart aching to wrap Shi Feng in a comforting embrace. But before she could bend, a blinding radiance burst from his form. In an instant, shattered bones rewove themselves. Torn flesh knitted together, and crimson blood ceased its flow. Shi Feng felt strength surge through his limbs. Embarrassed at his state of undress, his most private injury still raw, he snagged a scrap of cloth and held it tightly before himself. He knew all too well why. The thunder that had struck him had pulverized the fragile tissue there, leaving him vulnerable until it could regenerate. He'd been caught unawares last time, and Bibi Dong had glimpsed the wound. Now, at a full 1.8 meters with every contour of manhood complete, he had no wish to repeat that mortifying moment before his mentor. Yet the true marvel lay in his empty eye sockets. There, two spheres of crackling lightning hovered, casting an eerie glow across his features. Shi Feng stared, astonished, as the same autumn dew energy that had pierced his core now wove itself into those twin storms of thunder. A strange, crawling itch danced behind his lids, like 1,000 tiny ants skittering for footholds. He closed his eyes against the sensation and smiled to himself. His eyes were healing at last. "Teacher, I'm fine. I'll recover in no time," Shi Feng said, offering a reassuring smile to Bibi Dong. Her anxious features finally softened, and she leaned forward, examining the subtle changes in his body with wide-eyed curiosity. Shi Feng, however, barely noticed. His focus had already drifted back to the system space, where the final gift hovered before him in the shape of a book. He tilted his head. Could this be another martial technique, something like Lightning Fist or 3,000 Thunders? Before he could think twice, he opened the book. In an instant, it dissolved into a ripple of arcane energy that streamed into his eye sockets. A surge of power flared through him, and a line of text imprinted itself on his mind. The Eye of Heaven's Punishment, a divine artifact capable of amplifying supernatural abilities. It contains the essence of the last cataclysm it has withstood, and many other miraculous functions. Shi Feng couldn't help but click his tongue in smug satisfaction. At level 43, his body was already formidable, and he had nearly been slain by the recent lightning disaster. With the Eye of Heaven's Punishment now in his possession, even a Soul King-rank adversary would find its soul gravely threatened by a single devastating strike. The moment the power awakened, Shi Feng felt an unmistakable shift in his eyes. Energized by that mysterious force, they recovered with astonishing speed. A surge of vitality pulsed through his eye sockets, and brilliant light flared around him.